All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne.
I'm Dalton Gray.
And I'm Mariah Humphreys.
And today we're going to be talking about the post-kill work. So what happens after you pull the trigger? We spent a lot of time talking about getting to that point. And I found that a lot of questions I've been asked kind of revolve around what happens after that point. So we're going to cover a little bit of that today. But before we get too crazy into that, make sure if you have any of those questions, contact us on our social medias. Hit us up at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram. You can send us an email to info@thenorthernhunter, or if you go to our webpage, thenorthernhunter.com, we have a nice, beautiful contact button that Mo put there for us. You just got to fill out a little bit of information. It'll get you right to us, and we will definitely read any question you have or comment. While you're there, we have a nice shop page too. Mo also built that. Make sure you let him know how good a job he did. And we got t-shirts, hats, hoodies, things like that. Designs are coming down the pipe. It's going to be an awesome time. So make sure you're going in there, getting yourself some good merch. The logo looks pretty good. And if you'd like to support us during your adventure,
while you're on your hunt, you need to be protecting your rifle with a rifle cover from Stealthy Hunter, which can be found at StealthyHunter.com. Also, they carry Stealthy nutrition products, CBD oils, turmeric, essential vitamins, protein powders, things like that. Mm-hmm. And you can shop all their rifle covers and glassing pads and everything else at the trauma kit.
The best trauma kit on the market.
And all of the supplements at checkout if you use the promo code The Northern Hunter in the discount code box at checkout. You can get a discount on that order, and that also supports the show. Next, we have hammer bullets, the mono-metal bullets that we shoot here at the Northern Hunter Podcast. Most of them are always in stock. Mm-hmm. I just finished getting the hand load tuned up here last night at the time of this recording for my 300 Win Mag.
Yep.
And Mariah has been working on one for his 300 Short Mag. We're both shooting the exact same bullet out of our cartridges there, respectively. The 168 Hammer HHT, which is their new tipped bullet. Mm-hmm. It has a polymer tip that you can put in there, and it helps with expansion at a little bit lower velocities. Mm-hmm. And also, can help the ballistic coefficient a little bit.
Absolutely
flies very well.
It does. It does shoot very well out of both of our cartridges so far. So at Hammer Bullets, you can also use the discount code The Northern Hunter at checkout, whether you're looking for 22 caliber bullets all the way up to, I don't even know how big they go.
I haven't even. To 458, I believe.
Is it 458? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And 22 is actually 224. So come on.
Okay. Well,
they've got everything down to a 17.
Do they have 17 now?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
they've got 17.
So basically, anything you're probably going to need, they're probably going to have something for you. So be sure to shop your hammer bullet needs.
They have all the way up to .620 now.
Ooh, there you go. Well, if you're hunting elephants,
900 grain shock hammer.
Ooh. Wow.
Sorry, I saw that. I couldn't help bring it up.
That was a worthwhile interruption, Mariah. I'll excuse it. So, Hammer Bullets, your discount code, The Northern Hunter at checkout. Then head on over on our website to the Yukon River Knives symbol and head over to their website And you can shop knives such as the ATK rifle sling/knife combo. One of my personal favorites. You can also shop the small game and the hunter knife. Those three are their flagship products. And then you can also go into their other designs like the Sendero Bush or the Sendero pack knife now, and also the Sendero Classic, the butcher knife, the processing knife, things like that over Yukon River Knives. And as well, the same discount code applies at checkout, the Northern Hunter. No caps, no space.
Yep.
And then we have Beta 907 for any of your bear bait attractants and lures needs. Also, trapping and moose lures, legal for use in Alaska. Beta 907 is our local Alaska lures and supply company. Lures and attractant supply company. Also use the discount code over there, TNHP at checkout, not the Northern Hunter. TNHP.
Yep.
That's our nice little abbreviation there. Jess wanted to use TNHP, so we're just going to go that route. And any of your attractants and lures needs, we'd appreciate it if you'd shop from Beta 907. They're a great local Alaska company, and we love working with them. Even if we weren't partnered with Beta 907, all of us would still use Beta 907.
Been using it for a long time beforehand.
We've been using them for a long time before this podcast ever came about, and we're going to continue to use them as long as they're in production.
Absolutely.
Last but not least, our last existing partner, well, before the next big announcement, there's a little bit of foreshadowing for you. Our other partner is Weatherby Rifles in Sheridan, Wyoming. We'd appreciate it if we help influence your decision to buy a Weatherby rifle, whether it's a Vanguard or a Mark V or a 307. If you do make a decision based off of our information on the show here from us, we just ask that you let them know that we sent you. Just a little referral there. Let them know that we helped you make that decision. So
absolutely.
Back to you, James.
And and all of these companies are really great companies, run by really great people that make really great products. So shopping with them helps support them, helps support us. And I think everybody will be very happy with the products that they receive. So we have a very exciting announcement to bring to you guys today, and I couldn't be happier to bring it to the show and get this going live. So any of you guys that have listened to the show for some time, you know our mission and our goal is to educate hunters, prepare you as best we can with our experience, and to give you a better chance of success in the woods, achieving your goals, filling your freezers, whatever you're out to do. Well, we have the great opportunity to partner with a company that has the exact same goal in helping people, but with a lot more infrastructure, not only to educate hunters, but to also help them develop, implement, and follow through on their hunt plan, and also have access to remote parts of Alaska that would otherwise be very hard to access for non-residents. So, Dalton, you want to tell them what I'm talking about there?
This is the 60-Inch Club.
Yes.
Founded and run by Troy Sessions. Now, Troy is not a guide. Like you mentioned, we get a lot of questions from our listeners about how do I hunt Alaska on a DIY deal, but how do I pick a spot? How do I rent a raft for a float hunt? How do I plan my hunt logistics? How do I hunt this particular spot? How do I... I don't have the ability to go out there and scout it ahead of time.
They're out of state. They're not able to run out and look at it eyes on.
They're basically just looking, where do I go? How do I pick a spot to just go there? I have 10 to 14 days at the most to then do all my scouting in person on site during season, and then hope that it all pans out after I spent all that money.
Yeah.
But they don't want to spend, let's just say, anywhere from $20,000 to $28,000, given the outfitter, it can be anywhere in that range for a moose hunt these days. They don't want to spend that kind of money, but they're willing to spend something.
Yeah. It takes some investment.
So I will say this, knowledge costs money.
It does.
Knowledge is not free. And Troy Sessions is also a pilot. And he is the only one, to my knowledge right now, that offers a DIY hunt planner service for moose and caribou hunting in Alaska that flies and has hunted all these areas himself. He's got boots on the ground time. He's shot moose and caribou in these places. He's been there. He's landed there. He's scouted it out. He knows where the moose are. And you can go through 60-Inch Club. If you just type in 60inchclub.com, I think by the time this podcast comes out, we will have a direct web link on our website and our partners page. If not, then wait for the next episode in the next week after this recording airs. It'll be up sometime soon. We're still working on that.
Yeah.
But if you go over to 60inchclub.com, You'll see their website there. And on the top left corner of all of his display bar there, you've got unguided hunt planner. You can scroll through all your options there. In a nutshell, the unguided hunt planner costs X amount of dollars for 2 people. It's a minimum 2-person entry. And by my calculations, from what I'm seeing from current price from outfitters on guided moose hunts, for minimum 2-person, and that there is a minimum 2-person hunt plan requirement. You can't do it as a solo hunt. So you pay a set rate per person, minimum of 2 people, to get in on a hunt planner. Now, to be clear, this does not include transport, and I don't believe that includes raft rentals. You can add raft rentals on to this hunt planner service, but it does not include air charters in and out of your spot. So that's an additional charge on top of that. But like I said, to my knowledge, even adding a raft rental and adding an air charter service in and out of your hunt area, all included, 2 people, raft rental and air charter, you're still at half or sometimes less than half of a fully guided moose hunt.
Exactly. But with all the experience and the knowledge and the know-how and the training from
you know what you're getting into.
Experienced moose hunter.
Right. Yeah. So what Troy does, just to break this down a little bit farther here, just to flesh out what this DIY hunt planner is. First is a full training course access. Troy has a bunch of videos that he will send you once the course is purchased. You will be given a spot that he will say, look, this is where I'm going to send you, basically. And he has over a dozen spots, I think, currently, between moose and caribou spots. Predominantly moose, but he does have some good caribou spots as well. But for each spot, he has a whole video course breaking down the area, what it's like, what the terrain is like, where the moose are, how to call moose, and so on and so forth. Everything you need and everything that you will get on a guided hunt, minus the guide in the field. Right.
So you still get the feel of the DIY hunt. You're out there on your own. You're doing the hunt on your own, not just following somebody around.
Right.
But with that highest possible chance of success.
Correct. Second, your hunt planner comes in stages. First, you will receive in the mail a book stuffed with on-site pictures and intelligence of everything you'll need to know about your specific hunting area. Normally, this book arrives in January, and you're going to love it. This is on his website. Third, your regulations. This will come in July. Obviously, you can get the regulations online, but he wants to make sure that everybody has the regs. And it is important that you are familiar with every species that is in or out of season in the spot that you're going to be hunting.
Exactly.
Fourth, Google Earth training. And he says this is a one-on-one training video just for you about your location, filmed by us, showing you on Google Earth and OnX Hunt platforms precisely how you're going to hunt your location. So basically an e-scouting breakdown course of what the area is, where you're going to want to camp, where you're going to want to hunt, so on and so forth. Key interest points, camping spots, places we've personally seen the animals, and places to stay away from. He says, you are in good hands. We hold the largest harvesting of Boone and Crockett animals taken each year by DIY hunters. Our hunters have even surpassed all of the guided hunters for Boone and Crockett average. And then fifth, full customer support. You'll be able to reach us anytime for any questions you may have. We love helping you and ensuring your DIY hunt is a great experience. Your success and comfort out in the field is our top priority. Then they have a bunch of testimonials, little videos, and then they have a full breakdown about gear rental, how much it costs per person, minimum 2-person per location, what your hunt planner includes, and so on and so forth. So it also has his personal phone number listed there and their email. You can get in touch and ask some questions about it. Troy is a great guy. He's a down-to-earth human being. He's just like us. And I know we've talked about that before with all of our existing partners, but we only work with folks that we share common values with.
Exactly.
That are, this podcast exists for education and information provided to the outdoorsman. And Troy is doing the exact same thing.
He is.
Just in a different field than we're able to do on a large scale basis. So everybody that's been asking us about the best DIY hunt plan to come to Alaska and hunt moose, if you want to spend the money, on a DIY hunter, a hunt planner, but you don't want to spend the money on a fully guided hunt. If you can look at a guided hunt price and say, I can't afford $25,000, but I could do half that, then you can get into a hunt planner for that cost.
Yeah. And for a potentially once in a lifetime trip,
right?
It's well worth the money.
Exactly. Now, the next part of his 60-inch club website / company, I should say, they do have independent raft rentals where if you have a hunt planned, if you don't want a hunt planner, if you don't need that, you don't think, or you've already got a spot that you know you're going to go, but you want a raft, 60-inch Club also has proprietary inflatable boats. They have models with a transom that can take up to, I believe it's a 10-horse motor that he recommends.
On the biggest one, yeah.
He says 6 to 10 horse range. Just a little kicker to help you get up or downstream, accelerate the process, literally speaking there. And they have a very high weight capacity.
Yeah.
He's got photos of one man, a 6-horse motor, and 2 moose in one raft. Now, it's heavy. It's sitting pretty low in the water, but it's doable.
It's doing it. Yeah.
It will do it, and it'll do it safely.
Yep.
And the nice part about these rafts is they are Super Cub compatible. You can put them in an airplane to fly out to your camp. You're not fitting a lot of these large frame rafts in most Super Cubs. Can it be done? Yes. Do most pilots want to do it? Absolutely not. So if you're flying into a spot via Super Cub, these rafts will fit in a Cub. And they have float-only models with the, I suppose you could call it like a dual bow style raft where it can go either way, right? There's a bow at each end. It's not directional. And then he also has the transom rafts where you can put a little motor on it if you so desire. And he has a couple different models of the just float rafts, right? I forget the names of both of them right now. He has several different options.
Yep.
And these haven't been out for that long, and just a few years on the market. And they're starting to catch on. Our local, there's a couple of sporting goods stores in Fairbanks now, I think, that are carrying them in stock. I know at least one has them. I saw them on the wall yesterday when I walked through that store at Frontier Outfitters. So he has independent raft rentals. You can also purchase rafts through Troy if you just want to buy a raft for yourself and you just want to have one.
Yep.
That's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all going to be using these rafts. Right. I'm already thinking this moose season isn't even here yet. This episode will come out on Labor Day on Monday the 1st. Or, I'm sorry, not Monday the 1st, Monday the 4th of September. Yep. But moose season's already going on. And I'm already thinking about next year.
Oh yeah,
of what I want to do once we get a hold of these rafts, because this is we didn't do this in time to get a hold of a few rafts for this season. So for next year, we're going to have a whole lot of stuff going on with these rafts. I can assure you of that.
For everybody's sake that listen to our podcast, I hope you're not able to listen to our podcast Monday morning. Hope you're out in the woods hunting.
Yeah, I hope you're out there elbows deep in a moose and just
at least for our Alaska listeners.
Taking the moose apart and you're just wallowing in all your glory.
Yeah,
as I hope we all are. And then they also have game bags. These are, how do I say? I suppose ingenious would be the word.
I'll say the coolest game bags out there.
There's really not a whole lot else that I can think of that even comes close to this design. This is a one-of-a-kind game bag design. And you might think, well, how do you make a game bag better, right?
Yeah.
There's lighter game bags. There are thicker, heavier-duty game bags. But what's so special about the 60-inch Club game bags? Well, Troy is at heart a moose hunter. Everybody knows that's killed a moose or that's seen a moose, that these things are just monstrous.
Absolutely.
A hindquarter is not unheard of to have 120 to 130 pound hindquarter on a big bull moose.
Yep.
And how do you pick up a hindquarter once you cut from the knee down and get rid of that, lower bone section down to the foot that we all, kneecap, basically, just cut that joint and throw that away. Well, then you have nothing to grab onto, right? Well, he solved that problem. There are 2 handles on these game bags. Handles, people.
So no more bear hugging them to get them in the plane.
You don't have to wrap your arms around it and get covered in moose blood to pick up your hindquarter now.
Well, that's like half the adventure.
Well,
got a
for
special.
those of us that don't want that adventure and they don't want to blow out our backs picking up a moose quarter, there's a handle at the bottom of the bag
Mhm.
and a handle at the top of the bag
Imagine
that will support a moose quarter's weight.
Yeah.
Even if you're just picking it up and putting it on the rack of your four-wheeler, guys.
Yep.
I mean, come on. This is, I don't know how I didn't hear about these earlier, for one, and how more folks don't know about them, because it's a great design.
Yeah.
So we're all going to be hoping to fill them up with moose quarters this year. I'm sure, well, I don't want to jinx it, but I hope at least one of us gets to put a moose in these game bags this fall.
So basically, with these guys, if you live outside the state,
Yep.
they will, and you're not able to do any scouting, and you're not comfortable with your e-scouting abilities,
Right.
they can either give you a location to go to that they scouted, get you out there to begin with,
Yeah.
get you a plan for success with backup plans, give you training. So if you've never called a moose before in your life, they will teach you from the ground up. And all at a relatively affordable price when compared to
A fully
guided hunt.
Correct.
In addition to all of like the game bags and everything else that they provide.
Right.
Now go into the best part.
So before we get into the good stuff, I have to put out a little disclaimer here. We have a discount code that'll go through 60 Inch Club. However, the unguided hunt planners are booked out until 2026 right now.
Yeah.
So he's not accepting any more hunt planners currently. There is a second layer to this. If you become a member of the 60 Inch Club, which is, Mariah, $100?
$100.
Yes.
Number one, you can get a discount on your membership. Okay. You can get a percentage off of that if you use the discount code. You guessed it, the Northern Hunter. We're keeping it the same. You can get a discount code you can get a discount on your purchase of any 60 Inch Club raft, meat bags with handles, the full access program, and the club membership.
Mhm.
Now, let's talk about the full access program, because this is the other layer of the onion that is not the unguided hunt planner, but it is basically an advisory program.
Mhm.
If you pick a spot that you think is good for moose and you don't want to spend the money on an unguided hunt planner, or in this case, you can't get in line because he's not accepting bookings right now because they're that successful and they're that full, right?
Right.
His spots are filled out until 2026. What you can do is do your own research and pick an area that you think will be good for moose hunting, and you can get a full access planner
Mhm.
that Troy will go into Google Earth and OnX Maps and basically e-scout it from the perspective of a professional moose hunter. And then he will set up a Google Meet video call,
Mhm.
and he'll screen share and show you, look, this is what this area is. This is where the moose are going to be. This is where they're going to be bedded. This is where you're going to want to call from. Here's where you're going to want to camp. And he'll walk you through the hunt plan process without having the field knowledge of having been there.
Mm.
That's the main difference between a full access plan
Right.
and an unguided hunt planner.
But you're still getting a lifetime of experience.
Correct.
Right.
Right. You're still getting the experience level of him looking at an area. And you know what? The reality is he might tell you, there might not be a whole lot of moose in here.
Right.
But that's up to you to do the homework ahead of time. This puts more responsibility on your shoulders. So to summarize, you get a discount on the rafts, on the meat bags with handles, the full access planner, and the club membership. If you type in at checkout, the Northern Hunter, that'll get you a significant discount off of any of those purchases. And that'll greatly help us keep doing what we're doing here to make the show, to bring you resources
Right.
and direct you to resources like the 60 Inch Club.
Yeah.
So we'd appreciate it if you would shop from there. Basically, if you are interested in a DIY moose or caribou hunt in Alaska,
Mm-hmm.
go to 60 Inch Club. If you're not familiar with hunting in Alaska and you want some in the field, boots on the ground experience
Yeah.
and some advice from a professional, because I got news for you. The three of us here are not going to do a Google Meet with you and tell you if you have a good spot or not.
Not yet.
We have enough on our plate right now. We're all just frantically trying to put bullets together to kill moose with at this time of year.
We're having a hard enough time getting time to plan our own moose hunt.
Right.
Right. So
But
if you want that extended resource to actually plan a DIY hunt,
yeah,
the 60-inch club is where you need to
yeah.
go.
He's a fantastic guy. He's easy to talk to.
Yep.
Has a great heart for helping people. Just
Yes.
wants to help people get out there and have fun.
Yep.
Be successful. Their goals that they've set out for themselves. And he does a fantastic job of it.
Yeah.
If you scour all over that website, you'll see success after success. And
go to his YouTube. He
yeah.
has a phenomenal moose calling video.
oh yeah,
That was just uploaded. At the time that this comes out, it'll be out for about 2 weeks.
mm-hmm.
It's one of his more recent videos. It's like 9 minutes something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a quick breakdown of how to call moose, when to call,
Yep.
different times in September, how you need to call in those times. Go watch that. If
Yep.
you're going moose hunting, or if you're going back out moose hunting in the second half of the season, go
Yeah.
watch that video.
Yep.
It's awesome.
And with the membership and everything that comes with that, it's going to be well worth the entry cost. And like you had said, even
Yes.
the membership you get a discount on.
Yes.
So definitely go shop from him, support him, and
Yep.
everything he's trying to do.
Yep.
He's decided to help us and everything we're trying to do. And I think this is going to be everybody's best chance. If you're willing to put a little bit of extra money into a hunt that is already going to be expensive.
Mhm.
Coming up here is already expensive.
Right.
Adding some assurance
Yeah.
of a lifetime of experience on top of that, if you ask me, especially with the discount code,
It's money
well worth it.
Yeah, it's money
Yeah.
well spent.
money well spent.
The one thing I will say is, if you have any questions, if you're confused about any one little thing, if you want to know more information about any one of these things that we just talked about from 60-inch Club, his number is on the website.
Mhm.
Give him a call.
Yep.
And ask him. He'll be happy to help you out with it. Even if you're not getting an unguided hunt planner service, he's more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Absolutely.
So feel free to
So-
reach out to him, and we appreciate that.
All right. Well, do we want to take a quick break? Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 3378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure. All right. So, as part of the last episode we did with Jeff Day, which,
Yeah.
if anybody hasn't heard, was an absolutely just phenomenal episode. I had so much fun recording
Yeah.
that one with him.
That was a blast.
Towards the end of that episode, we had brought up a situation in which some out-of-state hunters found themselves in an unfortunate DLP situation, or DLP-esque situation. We'll just say that.
Yes.
I don't think it ended up being a DLP, but we had brought up that we would do some research into the DLP rules,
Yes.
figure out exactly what you guys can expect if you end up in a situation, which for those that don't know, aren't from Alaska, DLP stands for Defense of Life and Property. It's when you have to defend yourself from a charging bear, a
Mhm.
charging moose, whatever the case might be. That thing's not leaving you alone and you have to take action. The state of Alaska does have some rules in place that can make sure you don't get in trouble for that if it's out of season or maybe you're already tagged out. But they are very specific rules. So, Dalton, you did some research on that since that last recording. What'd you
Yes.
find?
So, what I want you guys to do, I want you to go read this for yourself. I'm going to outline a few of the bullet points and the important things and read you the Alaska state statute on it, which is not very long, but you need to go to Alaska Department of Fish and Game's website. Then on the top bar, click on species. There'll be a menu on your left. Go down to bear conflicts. It's about a third of the way down that menu on your left-hand side of the screen. Click on bear conflicts. That'll bring you to a page that is titled What to Do If You Have a Conflict with a Bear. All right. Now, scroll down to the bottom. It says, if you kill a bear in defense of life or property, in parentheses, DLP, I'm just going to read this very quickly for you guys. You may kill a bear in defense of your life or property if you did not provoke an attack or cause a problem by negligently leaving human or pet food or garbage in a manner that attracts bears, and if you have done everything else you can do to protect your life and property. It references Alaska state statute, such and such. Property means your dwelling, means of travel, pets or livestock, fish drying racks, or other valuable property necessary to your livelihood or survival. While game meat is considered your property, you may not kill a bear to protect it unless the meat is critical for your survival. Even in this situation, you still must do everything possible to protect the meat, i.e. proper storage, scaring the scavenger, etc. See Safely in Bear Country before you may kill the bear. If you have to shoot a bear, be sure you shoot to kill. Wounded bears are potentially more dangerous than healthy bears. Also, be careful of what lies beyond your intended target. Stray bullets can travel over a mile and still be deadly. Bears killed in defense of life or property belong to the state.
Yes.
If you kill a bear, you must remove the hide from the carcass and must also salvage the skull. You must give both the hide with claws attached and the skull to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. You must also notify your local ADF&G Wildlife Conservation Office or the Alaska Wildlife Troopers immediately. You are required to fill out and submit a Defense of Life and Property form questionnaire concerning the circumstances within 15 days. So, really, we could just read that, wrap it up, and be done. That's everything you need to know about it. But to give kind of a realistic situation, like the story that I told in the last podcast about these guys that were bow hunting, they were only armed with handguns, and they went in to retrieve the moose meat the following day. I think they'd killed it in the evening, and they went in to retrieve the moose, and a bear had claimed it. I don't remember all the exact details, if they had gotten a couple of quarters off already and were hanging nearby. Regardless, there was a grizzly bear that had claimed it, and had they gone inside that red zone, let's say, where the grizzly bear was going to charge to protect that carcass, they felt that they couldn't go any closer without provoking a charge. Therefore, they contacted the authorities. They were instructed, you must leave the moose.
Yes.
That's all the meat. That's the head. They couldn't just run in and grab the antlers and take off.
Right.
They left everything, because had they provoked a charge, they would have had to DLP it in defense of their lives, but they would have provoked it unnecessarily according to state law.
Yeah.
Therefore, it could have been avoided. Then they will get a citation.
Yep.
Now, if you're a resident and you have a grizzly bear tag or a locking tag in that area, or if it's just, on your license, right? If you can legally kill a grizzly bear, don't worry about it. Go in there, get that moose meat. If the bear comes out, shoot the bear.
Take care of business.
Problem solved, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Don't worry about, I can't shoot one in the spring. I don't care. Just kill the bear.
That's your bear.
You have no excuse then. At that point, you'll be charged with wanton waste if you don't shoot the bear.
Right.
Because you have the ability to kill the bear. Why wouldn't you just shoot it and claim the meat, right? Unless you feel, okay, if it's dark, right? Or if it gets claimed by a sow with cubs.
Right. Yeah.
Then you have a few different stipulations there.
Yeah.
Then you can't shoot the sow with cubs legally and tag it, right? At that point, the moose is hers.
Now,
the caribou is hers.
Let's say you end up in a revenant kind of situation.
Okay.
If we were to change the situation a little bit, you're walking to your moose, not all the way there, about halfway down the trail. And all of a sudden you notice some cubs come tumbling out of the woods, crossing the trail.
Yep.
Mama's right behind them, looks over, sees you, charges.
Shoot that bear.
If you shoot that bear, that does fall under DLP.
Correct.
Yes.
Because you were not intentionally provoking a charge by going into a known claimed bear kill.
Exactly.
Or I'm sorry, bear food stash, right?
So it's very situational.
Correct. You need to be familiar with the ins and outs of this statute and how this works in Alaska.
Yeah.
Know your rights, know your boundaries. At the end of the day, if the bear does charge, even if you provoked it, don't let it get to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately, being alive is best.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I would rather face the troopers with a citation form about unnecessarily killing a bear than I would rather face 25 surgeries to fix my face.
Right.
If you make it out alive. Okay. There have been many, many stories over the years of guys going into a moose kill after they've already butchered it and they're coming back for more loads of meat. And a bear comes in there and claims it and doesn't have time to bury it or make it known that it's there. And you come in and let's say you're by yourself. The situation happened not too long ago, just in recent years. There was a guy that was going back to get a load of meat from the moose carcass, and he got surprised by a bear, got attacked, pretty ripped up. Another couple of guys shot a moose. One of them left the kill. His other buddy was there finishing up the butchering process. Bear came in, found the kill, surprised the guy, killed him on site. Just mauled him and killed him right there.
Yep.
Okay. Obviously, if it comes down to you or the bear, shoot that bear.
Yeah.
No questions asked. At that point, you deal with the consequences later if you were right or wrong. And the troopers will decide that.
Yeah.
Now, make sure if you have to shoot a bear in defense of life or property, that you skin out the bear with the claws attached. You got to skin the feet out, skin it out as if you were going to bring it home for your own trophy.
You're required to do that.
That is not an option, right? And you have to bring that out to the troopers, and they will examine it. They'll make sure that everything's there. And if they so desire, they will go back to the kill site and examine what happened. They'll get your story. They'll get your hunting buddy's story separately. Then they're going to go back there and look at the scene of the potential crime, really.
Right.
Because it is a crime if you shoot a bear out of season or as a non-resident illegally, and you're claiming DLP. If it's unfounded, then you will get written up.
And for anybody who's ever been in a traffic accident and seen how thoroughly they can investigate those things when they choose to,
it's better.
The Fish and Game will do the exact same thing. They're going to go out there. They're going to look at the tracks in the mud or the dirt. They're going to look at the skid marks wherever that thing fell. They're going to look at where you were, the angles, how, where the bullet went through.
Right.
They're going to take all this evidence and basically reconstruct the situation you were in and then make their determination. So if you shot this thing as it was running away, or you're just trying to get away with a hunt, and claim it, maybe you just wanted to shoot a bear, they will know. They will find out. They've seen it all. So,
so that just a little bit of clarity there. If you do have more questions about it and you have a situation, a specific scenario that you have a question about, like, well, what if this happens? Email us in the show and we will answer that directly back to you. But this is just to provide a little bit of clarity to the situation that we discussed in the last episode with Jeff.
So we'll do one more pop quiz.
Okay.
You're out at your buddy's hunting cabin.
Okay.
You and a bunch of guys.
Yep.
You're cooking bacon. You're having a good time in between the hunting. Maybe you're not piling your trash, storing your trash properly. You're just kind of putting it out in the tree line a little ways. You wake up at 2 a.m. to go relieve yourself. You walk outside. There's a bear there. Starts to charge. Is that an appropriate DLP situation?
If it's me or the bear, I'm going to shoot it, but I'm going to get in trouble.
Exactly.
Because I or somebody there has been improperly managing your trash situation.
So when they do the investigation, they're not just going to look at the situation specifically to the bear, that exact incident. They're going to look at what happened around it. And it says clearly in the regs there in the front, you have to be intentional in trying to make sure that you're not leaving human trash around, you're not leaving food around, you're not provoking anything, because that would be considered a provoked charge.
Now, in that event, let's twist this a little bit. If obviously there's trash in every camp, you can only go so far, but you can put it away from your campsite.
Right.
You can put it 50 yards away or more, so that when you walk out of your cabin at 1 o'clock in the morning to go to the bathroom and you see a bear, he doesn't feel immediately threatened by you if you're 50 or more yards away. If you've got a trash pile right off the deck of your cabin and you walk out in the morning and you shoot that bear because he growls and turns to come at you, you're in trouble. Because you were improperly disposing of waste.
It's all about if you're being responsible in your actions out there.
Either disposing or storing your trash. Because obviously you can't just make a trip out every time you make trash.
Right, yeah.
Empty Mountain House wrappers,
Yep.
empty soup cans,
Yep.
steak packaging that you bring out for moose camp food.
Right.
You know,
there's
all
always
that.
going to be trash.
You have to manage it in a responsible way. And if you're being irresponsible about it, the troopers will find out.
And throwing it out the front door is not the responsible way.
No. So keep it away from camp.
Yep.
Yep.
Treat it like you would anything else.
That's a good scenario, and that's a good thing to keep in mind.
Yep. All right. So I think that wraps that up. Let's dive into our main topic. You're out on the hunt. You're successful. You've pulled the trigger, felt the recoil, watched the animal drop. Next step, make sure you did the job. I have heard, we're going to kick this one off with, we kind of comically wrote down there, post-shot verification of death.
It's a fancy way for making sure it's dead.
Make sure it's dead. There's a lot of times when people will shoot an animal. I wouldn't say there's a lot of times, but there's at least enough. I've heard several stories about it.
Mm-hmm.
Walk up and it's still alive. Now, in a lot of instances, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. You put another round in it, it happens, right? Especially with something like a moose. It's a huge animal. Bears are just tough as they come.
Yeah.
You know, there's just animals out there that are extremely tough, and sometimes they take another shot.
Yeah.
Not the end of the world. But what you don't want to happen is you don't want to get so excited by that moose being on the ground that you immediately run up, throw your rifle on the ground, you're high-fiving, bro hugging, and then you go up and try to maybe use your arms to kind of get a quick measurement of the antlers or something like that. And that thing's still alive. And those stories get told. That does happen.
I have one. Do you want to hear it?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is not a personal experience story. This has been passed down, and I can't say who it is. I really wish I could. So that there was a group of guys out moose hunting. They had spotted a bull moose, and there were several guys in this wheeler string that were riding down this trail. They had spotted a bull. It was standing out in the open. You know, they kind of got lucky. And the individual that I was told the story by was in the back of the line, and that there was a few guys. There were two guys up front, and then like 2 or 3 guys in the back, and they were kind of lagging behind, whatever. And everybody had shut off their wheelers. This individual said, "Well, I heard everybody else shut down, so I turned off my wheeler." And everybody else in front of me was motioning, the classic, waving their arm down with their palm down, like get down, get down. So they assumed, there's a bull moose up there, and they're getting a look at it. He said, so I'm down next to my 4-wheeler, and then I hear boom, shot goes off. A couple seconds go by, nothing. A couple more seconds go by, and then he hears another individual at the front of the hunting party say, "Don't just go running up to it." And then, boom, 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 boom. And then a very loud, accentuated kaboom, like a different rifle goes off. Well, come to find out, this individual had shot this bull moose in the hump. And he hadn't hit the spine. He had shocked the spine, but he had not directly hit the spinal cord. So the moose dropped from the impact of the shot and from that shock to the spinal column.
Exactly.
And
there's a group of nerves up there that when that shot goes through, it just basically
it temporarily
paralyzes them. Yeah.
So it looks like you just, plastered this giant bull moose, and he just, smashes into the ground, and you're thinking, wow, that was great. This moose is down, and that's great. And well, this guy got a little happy, and he started running up to it in the tundra in the knee-high tussocks. And as he got into spitting distance of this bull moose, it stood up, turned around, head down, and running. And this guy didn't even have enough time to shoulder his rifle. Well, he went to backpedal, and what happens when you try to walk backwards through the tussocks?
You miss one.
He tripped over, and as he was falling onto his back, he shot from the hip and shot it right in the nose and turned it. Thank goodness it turned the bull.
Yeah.
Well, he turned, and then a couple of other guys behind him, he's on the ground, so he's not going to get shot, and he knew better than to stand up after that, which is a good presence of mind to have. He's on the ground, racking his bolt. A friend of his behind him shoots it. At this point, they're just trying to put this thing down so that he's not endangering this guy that's 10 feet away from it.
Right.
And they shot a couple more times, and then the other guy that was along the hunt had a larger caliber rifle, and he shot the bull and put it down. But that's and there's another one that we've all probably heard of or seen. This is a pretty high-ranking individual in the, in the hunting media world. He has a popular show that was on Netflix.
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up.
if you don't know who it is, then it doesn't matter. But he also shot a bull moose and went up to it too soon, tracked it through the brush, and came up on it altogether too fast. Went to put an insurance round into it. He knew it wasn't dead. That's the difference here.
Yeah.
He went to touch off an insurance round, and the gun misfired.
Yeah.
The bull stood up, turned around, charged him. He tripped and fell, and the moose was right on top of him. Luckily, by some stretch of luck, he didn't get gored and pinned to the marsh. And they were able to retreat. The moose did not continue its pursuit, or it would have gotten him.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason, the bull stopped after the individual stumbled and then scrambled back up and ran off. And the guide that he was with put an insurance round into the bull and dropped it.
Yep.
So don't just go running up on moose. Give them plenty of time.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think, don't just go running up to it. Half the time, if you shoot and the animal goes down, give it at least 10 minutes.
Yes, I was going to say.
Don't just go walking up to it.
Even, and that goes for in the bear bait, that goes for if you can clearly see the moose standing in a field, if you can see the caribou on the tundra, even if you watch it go down, stay in the prone position, or at least stand up and get on your binos and just watch it. Yep. Just keep an eye on it, make sure it's not moving its head, anything like that. It's so easy to get messed up by some of these big animals. And you should approach, even if you can see the animal clear as day, you should still approach it with the same caution you would if you were in the thickest of brush. Yeah. There's an animal in there. It could be wounded, could be dangerous. Yeah. Moose are big.
Yes.
Even caribou are big enough to hurt you if they really want to. And, you really don't want to find yourself in a bad situation with a brow tine where it shouldn't be when you just had one of the greatest moments of your life.
There is not a big game animal in this state that I would want to come up to and grab its headgear and find out that it's still alive.
Exactly.
Not a single one. Yeah. They're all stronger than you are. Yep. And they all have the capability of throwing their head one way or the other and sticking you with whatever headgear they possess. That could be trouble. You catch one in the wrist, all of a sudden you're in a life or death situation.
Yep.
You cut your arteries, you're in trouble.
Yep.
If a big bull moose jumps up like that, knocks you over on your back, one hoof through your upper body, and you are dead.
Oh, yeah.
There is no chance you're going to survive.
It doesn't take a moose anything to break a leg, break an arm, or anything.
Steps on your leg, leg's broken. You're getting a ride out in a helicopter.
Yep. Think about the biggest bull you've ever seen at a rodeo.
Yeah.
And the kind of injuries that they, that's kind of what you're asking for if you do that. So,
except make the bull 7 feet tall at the shoulder.
Exactly. Yeah. So approach with caution, and don't be afraid to put an insurance round in it. In the instance where, let's say, the bull moose is on the ground.
Yeah.
But let's just say you can see a little bit of head twitching. Maybe you still see the lungs moving. You're in a controlled environment to place a very precise shot where you're not going to mess up any meat. You're just going to go through the vitals again and just put it down, secure that kill.
Yes.
And then you're safe. And then that's when the work begins.
Don't be trigger happy, and just because you see the lungs still going. If you shot him in the lungs and he's laying there and it's 2 minutes into it, don't just keep shooting it. Right.
And understand twitching too. There's always a little bit of twitching afterwards.
Right. Give it ample time. If it's still, if it's not dying from your first shot, if your first shot was subpar, then shoot it in the vitals and give it a quick, swift, humane death.
Yep.
But don't get trigger happy either. Find that balance and just use discretion in the field.
Yeah. So once you have verified it's dead.
Yeah. Now what?
Then it's time for the high-fiving, for the pictures.
Yeah.
And then it's time to get to work.
Yeah.
Anybody that's hunted any amount of time has heard the saying that after the shot, that's when the work starts.
Yep.
Up until then, it's just fun. And that is extremely true in Alaska, where our animals are massive.
Yes, they are.
Caribou are a little smaller than elk, I'd say,
Yeah.
but they're still a lot for one person, weight wise. You got black bears, which aren't too terrible, but if you're on a grizzly hunt, a moose hunt, anything like that, especially if you're just one or two guys, that's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our first point here is field dressing ungulates.
Yeah.
So moose, caribou, sheep, goats.
Yeah.
Anything like that. We'll cover a little bit of a team effort.
Yeah.
And then maybe some tips and tricks for when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered a little bit of this in the caribou episode before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing with the moose, I would say, is try to get yourself in an advantageous position with however it died.
Good luck.
Because moose are going to die how they're going to die.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're on their back. Sometimes they're on their side. Sometimes they just tuck their legs right underneath them and lay down.
That's the worst.
It really is.
Just lay on your side.
Sometimes they
It's
die
easier.
underwater.
And,
Yeah, sometimes they die in the water.
Oh, man.
Bring a rope along
Yep.
or a chainsaw winch
Chainsaw winch is the best. Those
Yeah.
things are awesome.
if you can
dude.
find one.
Find one or afford one. Yeah. And afford the weight.
Yeah.
They're not
and
light.
If you're flying in, man, that's a lot of weight for a super cub.
Yeah, but setting it up to where it's on its side, preferably.
Right.
On its back is not the worst thing. On its stomach is the worst thing. So there's ways to get around all of that, but on the
Mhm.
side, I think would be preferable. And
Yeah.
if you have a team of guys, let's say you're out there with your buddies, there's 3 of you or something like
Yeah.
that. In a lot of cases, you can maneuver a moose.
Yep.
With enough people.
Yep.
If you're by yourself,
You can do it somewhat comfortably with 2 capable guys.
yeah,
3 is really nice.
3's real nice.
4 is just too many knives.
Right. But yeah, so once you get it on its side,
Mm-hmm.
the first cut I make, and just for anybody, the reason I want to dive into this, I can't tell you how many times people have told me that the most intimidating part of getting into hunting is not actually the hunting itself. It's the processing
Everybody's
of the animal
afraid of it,
afterwards.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't know what to expect when they
Right.
break under that skin.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So my first cut I make is I'll go in through the sternum.
Okay.
I start up top, right below the neck.
Yeah.
And then that way you can unzip it down towards the pelvis. What this does is this allows you to avoid over penetrating on your very first cut and accidentally hitting that paunch,
Mm-hmm.
which is the last thing you want to do.
Yeah. Getting a face full of gas.
A face full of gas. And then you see the green slime
Oh,
start
yeah.
spilling everywhere, and it's just a nightmare. So if you start up on the sternum and you
Mhm.
work your way back down the gut, and when you basically put 2 fingers inside underneath the hide.
Yes.
And when you run your knife between those 2 fingers,
Yep.
you're separating the membranes and basically pushing that hide up. And you'll feel it when you get down there towards the paunch.
Yep.
You'll feel it putting resistance on the back of your hand, but having those fingers there really creates a good barrier and keeps you from.
It's a nice little guide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So once you have it unzipped, Mo, what's the next step you're doing?
We'll start skinning. Skin some of that hide out of the way.
Yeah.
Maybe zip up a couple of quarters
There you go.
and skin off the quarter and
So
start cutting the quarter apart.
define zip up a quarter.
Well, the same way you zip down the middle.
Yep. Yep. You
Nice.
start right at the armpit
Yeah.
or the chest part
Right.
leading into the armpit.
Or actually, sometimes I'll zip down the quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
It's
is.
easier to do.
Yeah.
Usually, no, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I start at the chest and work my way up simply so that when I get up to the ankle part where I'm going to cut around,
Okay.
I can stay under the hair.
Yes.
I don't like cutting through hair with my knives. That's one
Right.
of the quickest ways to dull your knife out.
Yeah. So
Um,
it's not just dulling your knife, but you get so much hair everywhere.
Right.
Even
yeah.
around
Right.
that knee joint, just above the knee joint is where you're going to make that circle cut.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, I will still start up above the knee joint when I'm
Mhm.
going down each quarter,
Okay.
but I poke in and then just stay under the hide.
Yeah.
I don't just take my knife and just ring around that leg.
Which is what every beginner
A
does.
lot. Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of guys that are pros that still do it that way
Really?
because it's just
Yeah.
faster.
It is
and
faster.
I've asked them like, well, why are you doing that? Well, why wouldn't you just stay underneath the hide? And they say, well, it's just down the leg here. It's not that much hair. It's personal preference.
Yeah.
A little hair is too much hair.
Yeah.
And every bit I can control, I'm going to.
It doesn't matter how hard you try. There's going to be hair.
There's going to be
so
some
you may
hair.
as well just try to keep as much off as you can.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Just do your best from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for getting down the leg there, I make that little under the hide ring above the knee joint, make that circle cut, and then go down the inside center of the quarter, and then go down and meet that center cut down the sternum, not going down all the way to the pelvis for that gut cut. Right.
Yeah.
And then you just, well, like Mariah said, you just start skinning that off and then just peel it all up. And on a moose, you're doing one side at a time. Really, on anything, you're doing one side at a time.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of that is once you get hide off of each quarter and, obviously from the middle up, it's laying on its side, you can skin it all the way back to the backbone.
Yes.
And then lay that hide down as a blanket.
Yep.
And then you can get a guy underneath the front quarter, and this is where having two guys is a real help, and we'll get into how to do it solo. But you have somebody push that leg up. If it's a moose, put it on their shoulder and stand up and put pressure on it, and then you cut underneath that front quarter. I generally go front first, then back, and then that way, when they have it stood up, and you make that final cut above the shoulder blade up by the back strap, and it comes loose, it just plops down on that hide membrane on the inside of the hide. So it's not going in the mud or the muck or the swamp or the grass or the tundra, right? And then straighten the game bag.
Yeah.
Don't just leave it sit in the tundra or anything like that. You need to have game bags out before you get quarters off. Once that quarter is free, your buddy's holding it off the ground. He's resting it on that hide membrane. You grab a game bag, get it sleeved on there, do the old classic shake and get the bag on that moose quarter. And then you can lay it down, right?
Yeah.
And you can use the handles.
Yeah.
On your 16-inch club game
Exactly.
bags and lay it down.
Yeah, good one.
Now, there's two ways you can approach this when you first get your kill. And we're going to cover both because there's two different trains of thought. I fall under one. I know you guys fall under a different.
Okay.
To gut or not to gut. So I gut everything I shoot for the most part. I've tried the gutless method several times. Not a fan. And it's just the way I've always hunted. It's the way I've always done it. I like getting those out because, one, you get the bloating. Two, you just eliminate the risk of a careless swing of the arm or a slip, a knife slipping out of your hand, puncturing that paunch, and you don't have to be quite as careful. Once you get those guts out of there, you can pretty much just go to town. Yeah. The easiest way to do that is once you have your quarters and your belly unzipped.
Yeah.
And you've gotten some of that skin pulled out. You don't want to go all the way.
Yep.
But you basically start going back up down the neck or up the neck.
Yeah.
Till you get to the esophagus.
Yep.
That's your handle. So once you can get that out of there, you get through that, you basically grab a hold of that and you start to pull. And then from there, if
you've already split the ribs at this point?
No, actually, that's a good point. You do start splitting the ribs. I missed that step.
Yeah.
Yep. So when you split the ribs, it really, there's multiple methods for that too.
Yeah, there are.
On a moose, realistically,
start up that chainsaw, baby.
Don't actually. I know guys that do that, and it makes a mess.
Oh yeah, it does. I'm just kidding.
But I do know people that do bring a good wood saw with them. A little compact wood saw from Home Depot or something like that. If they're on wheelers, they can afford to have the little space in there. That works phenomenally.
A wood saw.
A wood saw.
Like a sawzall?
I don't know how else to describe it. It's a wood saw. It's
just a hand saw.
It's a hand wood saw. Yeah.
But a sawzall does actually work fairly well if you've got the weight.
Oh yeah, a sawzall would work awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can afford to have the battery powered tools out there.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm taking
But I'm talking about a little hand saw.
I was going to say
a little hand saw,
Yeah.
and you can get through it real easy there. There's a lot of bone saws you can get at stores. I'll tell you this: I've used the bone saw that comes in the handle of that Gerber hatchet. Which one? That Gerber hatchet, I'm just going to throw them a little thing. That's probably one of the best hatchets I've ever bought. It's not light. It's not expensive, but it just has held up to everything I've thrown at it.
Yeah.
But it has a little bone saw in the handle, and I'm telling you right now, don't use that for moose. It's too small. You can do it. I have done it.
Blade is too flimsy.
It's not even that it's too flimsy. It's just that it's too short. You can't get a good full stroke on it. So when you're basically cutting it, a quarter inch at a time. And on a moose,
that takes you a while.
That takes a while. So bring a good saw. The other thing you can do is if let's say you do have multiple hatchets or something like that, obviously you can just run a hatchet on the bottom of the sternum, just kind of hammer on the back of that and it'll split those out real nice.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for the correction on that. I did miss that stuff.
No, yeah, that's
once you get
I've done it.
Yeah, once you get that taken care of, you can get in there and really do a lot of good stuff. You start pulling that esophagus back, and basically, if you've got a good sharp knife, you can just run all through the sides of the interior of that carcass. You're just cutting that little loose bit of membrane in there, and you start pulling out everything, essentially.
Yeah.
You'll notice when you get that lower section unzipped, everything just starts kind of wanting to fall out anyways. And all you're trying to do is get behind that without having to, without your knife tip puncturing it in any way, which can be a little bit more tricky.
So explain to our listeners then, just for a full explanation, when you have the ribs opened up and you're pulling on the esophagus, do you have to cut anything free while you're pulling all that junk out?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. It's all attached in there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that's what I was saying. So when you get your knife, you're basically going inside the rib cage and you go through there and you're just going to feel along the edge of it. And as you're pulling, you'll feel the tight spots. You can't really see what you're doing on a moose.
And this is like
in most
up
situations.
along this is basically
along the base of the spine.
Correct.
Basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. And that's where most of that membrane is going to be.
Right.
And so you just kind of cut along the base of that spine. And then as you're going, you can just keep pulling on that esophagus and everything will just kind of fall out as it goes.
Yep.
Now there's a little bit more membrane towards the edges of the ribs and everything that you'll have to pay attention to. Once you get going though, it's really easy to just kind of see the next step as you're rolling. And then once you get towards the back end of the moose, that becomes real self-explanatory too. In most cases, you can just roll that paunch off once you get the membrane cut back to about I'd say within a foot and a half of that back hip.
Yeah.
Most of it'll just be out at that point. You can actually see what you're doing. You can get in there and work it. And then from there, you're just trying to keep the exit pipe from spilling out onto your meat. That's very important as well. And if you're good, you can cut it out altogether.
We'll say one thing, especially if you haven't cut open a moose or a cow before. You're gonna first thing you're gonna do when you walk up to the animal is say, as I've heard my dad say many times, "What have I done?"
Yes.
Yeah. So I have something to add to the gutting process.
Right? Yeah, go for it.
If you have the ability to get the moose up on its back and maybe you tie off each leg so it's as spread eagle as it's going to get, right? This is especially applicable for moose. Everything else, you can pretty much manipulate it enough that you can gut it with all the quarters still on the carcass. What I have found is that if I am unable to get a moose up on its back and tied into position so that I can then make that center cut, skin it back a little bit, cut the ribs open at the sternum, and then pull the guts out. If I can't get it up on its back to do that, because in that situation, you can leave all the quarters on the bull or the cow, I suppose, if you have a cow tag, and you can get the guts out before you take any of the meat out. Now, I'm a heart guy. I keep the heart, but that's the first thing that I'll grab.
Yeah.
And then once you get the guts out, you might as well just grab the tenderloins because they're just right there, right?
Exactly.
But if you don't have the ability to get the moose up on its back, I have gutted moose before where I can't get them on their back. I don't gut them until I get the one side's 2 quarters off first.
That is a good point.
Because they are so heavy.
They are.
You can't gut it by pulling the esophagus down and then gut it out that way with all of that weight on the moose's side pushing down on the carcass.
I think, unless you have a buddy to hold a leg or something like that.
Right.
Which in this...
Even then, it's going to be really hard. And this is my experience now. You can gut it by not going up with the esophagus. I've seen a lot of guys just gut it. That they'll skin it open and skin it back enough that they can get access to it. They'll cut that abdominal membrane open, reach up in there, get up in front of the stomach, and at this point, you are past your elbows into the cavity of this moose.
Oh yeah,
sometimes up to your shoulders, and you're just going by feel. Now, don't cut your finger.
Yeah,
but if you're right-handed, like I am, use your left hand to kind of find where those membranes are that attach everything. Now, you want to be careful that you don't cut open the bladder or any of the intestines or the top of the stomach, and then start squeezing everything out inside the cavity of that moose, because then you're defeating the purpose of it.
Be very intentional with every cut.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can just reach up as far as you can to the back of the lungs and then gut it from the back of the ribs back and get the stomach and the intestines and all of those things out without pulling on the esophagus.
Yep.
That's another option to gut it that way. A lot of guys don't like to do it that way because you have a better chance of cutting open something nasty.
Yeah.
And then it sits inside that carcass until it gets washed off, right?
Yep.
So if it's on its side, then if you can get it onto its back, then that works great and you can leave all the quarters on. Otherwise, if it's on its side and you can't do that and you don't want to risk cutting anything bad open, I would get the front quarter and the hind quarter off. Be careful when you're taking off the hind quarter that you don't cut the guts open in there by the ball joint.
That's the biggest thing to watch.
Right. And then once you get those two quarters off, then you can cut the ribs open, cut that whole side of ribs off.
Well, and then you can see what you're doing.
And then the whole moose is wide open on that side, right?
Yep.
And that way you can do the one side of the moose gutless, and then before you roll it, you can just yank those guts right out.
Yeah.
And then roll it over. They're out of your way.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And in most cases, if you do it correctly, it comes out as a whole big bubble, basically. It's one giant paunch. That's what they call it. And you can just kind of push that out of your way a little bit. You're not going to get it very far without risking puncturing it, but you can at least get it to where you can have your feet around the moose. You can maneuver. Yeah. And none of this is going to be easy. Just keep that in mind.
It's a whole process.
It is a lot of weight.
If
it is
you do it
big
properly,
animal.
Is it big?
Well, and it's easier if you do it properly. And you'll know the second second you make a mistake. Everybody does it.
Once that smell hits your nostrils, oh boy.
Everybody's done it once.
Now the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
I will say one big thing, big thing, when you're gutting, when you get back towards the back of the membrane, watch out for those tenderloins.
Yes.
Because it's very easy to run your knife right through one.
Yes.
And next thing you know, especially if you do, because even if you do bring out the gut properly, you might have a nicked spot or something. There might be a spot from a bullet.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've got some of that bile in there. And as soon as that gets into that piece of tenderloin, you don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a real sad day. Now a moose tenderloin's big enough, you can probably cut it off and still save some of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's where what Dalton was saying about using both hands in that instance, using your left hand to feel and really, kind of keep your right hand just next to it so you know right where you're cutting. And that's super important.
I had a very sad day one time.
Did you?
I didn't cut them both up, but it wasn't a moose either. But I did one time, was cutting a caribou up and just got ahead of myself and wasn't really paying attention. The next thing I know, I'm like, oh, that wasn't what I meant to cut. And I still cut the tenderloin out, and I think it was wintertime. I laid it on the snow, and next thing I know, it's amazing how fast you can see the color of the meat change where the bile goes in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody would tell me that'd be good for me, but
Yep.
Oh,
it's not.
Yeah, nope.
And so the actual process of gutting a moose is going to take you a bit. It's not going to be the longest part of the process, but it's going to take you a lot longer than we probably made it sound like today. So be conscious of that. Be aware of that. A couple of reasons you would want to gut a moose. One is that it does take a long time to get one apart. Just due to the sheer weight, the sheer size. It's not going to be as fast as, say, a whitetail or something like that.
Nothing with taking a moose apart takes a short amount of time. It's all a process.
So getting the guts out really helps to avoid, like I said, either any kind of accidental cut made to that, which can then damage the meat, contaminate the meat, contaminate the site. Now you're dealing with that smell. So if you're careful and you get that out of the way, you don't have to worry about that at all. And the other part, and this is specific to me and people who kind of hold that same, I guess you could say, value system. But I've said it from day one on the podcast. I'm a meat hunter. I hunt for resources. And for my family, it's very important to bring everything home that we can.
Yeah,
we bring, boned. We keep the bones in the meat when we bring it out. We'll bring the ribs with the bones on them out. In a lot of cases, we'll try to bring the spine out too if we can, if it's feasible. Every once in a while, you run into a situation where you just cannot afford the weight. You can't put it in the plane. You can't put it in the boat.
Right.
Things happen. We try to bring the hides out in most cases, but a moose hide is a lot of weight.
It is.
So, you'll have to be careful and make sure that you are within your weight limitations, especially if you're flying or something like that.
Yeah.
But in pretty much every case, we bring the entire carcass out with us. So the only thing that's usually left is that gut pile. So if I can get that out of the way and get it pushed off to the side, then that means everything that's sitting there in front of me is basically what I'm working on. That's what I'm taking apart. I'm bringing, everything out that I can. And so for me, that's what I like about the gutless method is it kind of frees up everything else for me to pick it apart piece by piece, put it in organized in an organized fashion to where I can then get through that gut pile and pull out whatever I need that is also edible. Because there are a lot of edible organs on a moose.
Yeah.
If you've never seen a moose liver, it's big.
Yeah.
If you're into eating liver, that's going to last a while. So
make you a lot of liver pills out of that.
Yep. So, but you guys run the gutless method a lot.
Well, I wanted to wrap back to this just real fast about getting the guts out. There are other benefits to it. You shoot a moose at last light and say you don't want to be out in the dark or it's pouring down rain and you want to come back and work with this in the daylight hours. You've got to leave it overnight. Gut that moose.
Absolutely.
Do not leave the guts in it
in
overnight.
That situation, yes.
And come back.
Absolutely.
If it is humanly possible, you need to get the guts out of that moose because those will turn overnight. It'll trap all the heat in that carcass.
Yes.
You need to make that center cut and get the guts out of it. Whatever that entails, get the guts out of it. Even if you have to suffer through getting half the quarters off, taking off 2 quarters and opening up the ribs, like we said, if you can't get it on its back, even if you just do half the moose, rip the guts out, and then lay that hide back over the rest of the carcass.
Right.
And you've got the other 2 quarters in game bags hung in a tree somewhere, right?
Yep.
That way it'll cool overnight. That's another huge reason that you would want to gut a moose. If you can't do it all, I've done a couple of moose where we shot them at last light. You just stick it out, do it in the dark. You get back to camp at like 2:00 in the morning, whatever. It's part of it. If the weather is good, do it.
Yep.
I've also had them where we kill them and we come back the next morning after we gutted it and take care of it in the daylight hours.
But keep in mind, you always run the risk.
Yeah, as a resident
of a bear finding it and claiming it.
Yeah.
So when you do come back in the morning, keep that in mind.
Right. As a resident, that's less of a concern because if there's a bear there, I can probably shoot it.
Exactly.
Right.
But you are right though.
Especially if you're a non-resident hunter.
Right.
Keep that in mind. That is a risk you're taking if you leave it overnight.
When possible, I'll do all of it immediately.
Yep.
Even if it's dark, unless there's bad enough weather that I'm not going to stick it out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm sticking it out and I'm going to do it.
And I've done moose on nights where there's no stars.
Yeah.
There's no aurora. There's no anything.
Better have you 2 headlamps.
Pitch black.
Yeah.
And if you have a good quality headlamp, I'm here to tell you it can be done.
Yeah.
It can easily be done. You've just got to be, like we talked about before, very careful with your cuts. Very careful not to cut yourself.
Yes.
In the process.
Your hands covered in dark blood. It's hard to tell what's hand and what's meat.
Yep. And especially when it's getting dark and you're feeling rushed, you're feeling that push. I got to get this done right now. It's very easy to get careless.
And be careful that you're not leaving too much meat behind because it's dark and you're in a hurry. And man, it's getting cold and I'm tired and man, my back hurts. I'm bent over dealing with this big heavy moose.
Yep.
And you leave too much meat on that carcass. Don't do that. Or at least make the first trip out with meat that night. If you've got wheelers, Take all the meat out that you think you got and leave the rack there.
Yeah.
Come back in the morning. That way, if a trooper comes to your camp first thing in the morning and says, "Oh, you got a moose. Are you done?"
Yep.
You can say, "Well, I did it in the dark. I'm going back in the daylight to make sure I got all the meat, and I'm going to retrieve the head last."
Yep.
That way, you are just extra safe. Go back and check it in the light.
Exactly.
If you're in that situation.
Right. Another situation where you would really want to make sure you're getting those guts out is if you ended up with a gut shot, because then you've already got a damaged paunch. You've already got spilled out guts in there. You want to get that stuff out as soon as possible. There are a lot of people that are very skilled. They can cut around, and do this gutless method we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
And not puncture anything, not damage anything, not contaminate anything.
Yeah.
But if you've already got damage to that area, get it away from the meat as fast as you can.
Yeah.
If you get stomach content or intestine content on the meat, you really don't want it. That is bad news. So
yeah.
I will say, we talked a little bit about having to do this by yourself or trying to gut it without having somebody there to hold the legs.
Yeah.
Even if you've got just two guys there, it can be hard to gut it. It can be hard to skin it and pull a quarter off.
No. Correction. It is hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter how
even
many
with two
guys
guys
are there. You can only get so many guys to hold one quarter.
Yeah.
It's always going to be difficult.
But it is
Right.
very doable,
I mean,
even with two people, to gut a moose with all the quarters.
Absolutely.
So I've done it plenty of times.
Absolutely.
What I was going to say, bring some kind of cord. Even if you've just got a 50-foot handful of 550
Yep.
or paracord or something, because that's enough to, string to a wheeler or to a tree or even to a tussock, if that's all you've got to hold a quarter, even a few inches up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Now,
Yep.
I've been holding quarters since I was like 5. So, if me and my dad and, one other person on a moose, we can have it done in 3 or 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But that's 3 people who have been,
Who know what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 20 years.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And my dad's been doing it for longer than that.
Yep. All working together.
Yeah.
All working in unison. Yeah. It takes a while. There's nothing easy about doing a moose.
And I think we did do one, and there was a few more people there to hold legs and stuff. I think we did do one in like 2 hours.
Yeah.
But
yep.
I did one with a friend of mine a few years ago. This has been a few years ago now. Probably 4 or 5 years now. But a friend of mine killed one, and it was basically just the two of us doing it. There was a couple of other folks there, but they weren't. They didn't really help that much. But this other guy and I did the whole moose by ourselves, and we had it in game bags and done in 2 hours flat.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was, we were moving.
Yeah.
And
you're
it was
not gonna
dark.
get better than that.
Yeah.
And it was dark.
Yeah. If you're grooving right along, that's about as good as it gets.
And that was,
Sure that wasn't a caribou?
oh, I'm positive.
Yeah.
I remember it
if it takes
vividly.
you 2 hours to do a caribou, you did something wrong.
I remember that vividly. Well, not necessarily. We'll get to that. With different ways of having to cut animals up,
That's
depending
true.
on what you want to do with
that
it.
That is on our agenda.
But
we'll
get there. Again, more foreshadowing. But yeah, and I felt like that 2 hours was as fast as I could have done it in that given situation in the dark with headlamps.
Right.
And I believe we gutted it after we got the 2 quarters off the one side.
Yep.
We got the front quarter off, got the hind quarter off, took off the back strap. I reached in before I even took the guts out and got out that one side's tenderloin. I got off all the neck meat off that side, and I got all the rib meat off of that side.
Okay.
And then I opened it up and pulled the guts out, and then we rolled it over. Now, the other thing is, even if you're not concerned about getting gut contamination in the animal, when you go to roll it, it is exponentially easier to roll half a moose over if there aren't any guts in it.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's another reason that we can add on as to why, even if you don't need to gut it, get half of it off, pull the guts out. It's easier to roll.
That's the easiest way to deal with them.
That's generally how I do moose, is I'll pull the guts out halfway through.
Yeah. And I'll say this too, if because this is kind of geared towards people that have never done this before.
Yes.
Just giving them an idea of what to expect. You're going to try probably 3 to 4 different ways of doing something like this before you find your favorite way to do it.
Yep.
You're going to do something your first time that you'll look back on and think, man, that was just, it would have been so much easier if I'd changed this. Maybe you want to take the quarters off next time. Maybe you didn't the first time.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to take the whole half of the animal apart before rolling the guts out.
Yeah.
Maybe you tried to do that, ended up puncturing something. Next time you're going to take the guts out first. It's all very individual. I'll say that. It's whatever is easiest for you as the person doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And every year that you do it, if you're someone who lives in Alaska and can hunt moose every year you do it, you'll get faster, you'll get better, you'll figure it out. You'll know exactly what you do to make it easiest for you.
At the end of the day, it's whatever you are the most proficient with that the end result ends up being the cleanest possible meat
Right.
at the end of the process.
Yep.
Whether that's guts in, guts out halfway through.
Yep.
Whatever that ends up being, you figure it out. We're just telling you what we've done.
Yeah. Exactly. So talk about the gutless method for a second.
Gutless method is just don't take the guts out.
Yep. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Basically, you just make all those same cuts. You get that hide peeled up and laid over on the one side like a big old blanket.
Mm-hmm.
And you take off the quarters, take off the back strap, take off the neck meat. And if you have to take the ribs out on the bone, then you do cut out the ribs.
Mm.
And then you can reach in through the top of the paunch above the guts and get the tenderloins out without having to rip out the guts, which not everybody knows how to do or prefers doing.
Yep.
It's not that hard. There are a few YouTube videos out there, I think, that show it. I think Remy Warren had a caribou hunting video that he posted a few years ago, and he showed a pretty good little detailed video of how to get tenderloins out without gutting the animal.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the better ways I've seen it explained on film, like on an actual animal.
Right.
There's only so much you're going to be able to interpret and learn from just listening to us talk about it and try to describe it.
Yeah.
At some point, we'll have our own film showing how to do it.
Yep.
In an ideal world.
In an ideal world.
Assuming that we still shoot more animals after this episode. Knock on podcast table. And but yeah, for right now, that was just a video that I remember that stands out in my mind. I watched that and I thought, oh, he's actually explaining how to do this. Now, I had already been doing it for a while. I'd been taught in person on moose and caribou and whatnot. But for folks that aren't familiar with that way, that's how, if I'm doing an animal the gutless method, for instance, I don't think I've ever taken the guts out of a black-tailed deer.
Okay. Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I've just always just done the gutless method.
Yep.
And obviously I'm getting the tenderloins out of there. That's salvageable meat. And I'm reaching in on top of the guts from the outside and reach in and grab the tenderloins and cut them out carefully. Now, like I said, watch that video by Remy if you can find it. That's probably one of the better ways I've seen it done on camera at this point.
Yeah. And for anybody that's brand spanking new and doesn't know where the tenderloins are, it's basically just opposite the back straps on the back half of the animal.
Yeah.
You just reach in there over the paunch. It's on the inside of the spine.
Yep.
And you, as soon as you see them, you'll know exactly where they are.
Yeah. Pretty much where you would imagine the kidneys to be in the top of the back.
Yep.
That's going to be right above that area, right along the bottom of the spine. And then basically to complete the process, I would say as a caveat, don't ever roll an animal over before you've gotten all the meat that you're going to get off the one side that you already worked on.
Right.
Get the quarters off, take off the back strap, take off all the neck meat, take off the ribs, get out the tenderloin on that side, and then roll it.
Yeah.
Don't roll it over and think, well, I'll get the neck meat off that side all at the same time as this side. No. At that point, it's going to be dirty.
Yeah.
You're going to get everything nasty, and you don't want to do that.
Well,
complete one half, roll, repeat.
Right. Well, and that's one thing, like with what you were talking about, rolling the hide over it like a big blanket. That way, when you take those quarters off, they can hit that. They're not on the grass. They're not in the dirt or the mud or anything.
Yep.
That is huge for quality of meat. If you let it get dirt and leaves and all this stuff on it, that's really going to affect the quality of the end product that you have. Another way that's good to manage that if you're not able to immediately put it into game bags. And we've talked about this on the show before, is bringing a tarp with you.
Yes.
So you set that hide, lay it down like a blanket. That way, when you make that final cut, it just falls right onto that. It's still clean.
Mm-hmm.
From there, you're able to reposition yourself, get into a spot where you can hoist it up properly and lay it down on that tarp, free of any leaves, any sticks, any debris. And that's about where it lays until you're ready to put it into game bags and haul it out of there.
Right. A lot of times when I'm, cleaning or field dressing a moose, or usually a moose, sometimes if I'm doing a caribou by myself or something, maybe too, but I will start some of the cuts on some, on the back strap, maybe even on a hind quarter, while the moose is still on its side. Like I get the quarters off, I get the back strap, everything that side. But if I can take that top slice along the backbone on the back strap,
that's a good point.
If I can, I will skin as far as I can. Sometimes you can move it around a little and get almost all of it skinned before you roll it over.
Right.
And that'll keep you from pulling stuff out of the way. Because as soon as you roll that thing over, you lose a lot of control where it lands, as much as you might try.
Exactly.
And once the other half is off of the carcass, it's not going to be laying with those quarters at a 90-degree angle to the ground. Those quarters are going to be pointed in the ground because the other side of the rib cage is gone. The quarters are gone on that side, so it loses all of its mass on that half of the body. So then you're having to really pull up on those quarters, and it gets a little bit harder to get at the bottom half of the chest cavity. So like Mariah said, skin as much of it as you can while it's on the one side. And then roll it.
And with a moose, you can get pretty far.
You really can.
When it's still all in that shape, before you gut it or anything, skin the bottom side, skin the back. You can usually get all the way around.
For the most part.
Well, and to that point, going basically to where it hits the ground allows you the largest blanket and the largest area to keep that meat clean, keep it safe. And so essentially that gets you to having the meat on the tarp or in the bags, as you would.
Ready to bring
for
it
anybody
home.
That is, has questions about the neck meat and everything like that. Really, it's just you can't. You just keep cutting until you see bone and pretty much nothing but bone. There's a lot of neck meat on a moose. There's a lot of hump meat on there. There's a lot of just kind of extra to the quarters meat, and you'll know. You'll be well familiar once you look at it, and you'll see exactly where you need to cut, exactly what you need to cut off. And the thing about it is, it's all up to you on how you want to prepare it afterwards. So if you don't care about leaving nice big roasts, you don't have to cut it off in nice big chunks. It's easier that way.
Much easier.
But if that's all you're able to do, it is smaller chunks for whatever reason, maybe you're by yourself, access issues, then feel free. You can just throw it in the burger bag.
It will preserve better if it's all in bigger pieces.
It will, yes.
The more surface area there is, the more of it will crust over that you then have to trim off before you process it at home.
And also understanding that the smaller pieces that you bring out are going to potentially turn into jerky before you're able to get them to the house.
They're going to dry out, shrivel up.
So making sure you take all of the edible meat is something that we've talked about before. And I'll just touch on the exact story I heard before, which is there was I think it was actually, it might have been a caribou. I'll just say it was a caribou. And the Fish and Game figured out they wanted to go see this kill site. They went out there, they scraped the ribs of this caribou, and they got enough meat to make a piece of jerky. And the guy got a ticket for that.
Wow.
So when you're cleaning, doing the final clean on that carcass before you walk away from it, whatever bones you are choosing to leave there, whether it's the ribs, the spine, whatever it is, you've got to make sure that you have done everything possible and taken all of the meat from in between all of those little ridges and all of those little spines, and there's nothing left that they could hem you up on, because they will. If they go out there and they see that, they will hem you up on it.
Read the Fish and Game regs for what salvageable meat requirements are. And what quantifies you being able to leave meat in the field, such as meat that is ruined by gunshot damage. Okay, you're not required to take out completely destroyed bloodshot meat.
Exactly.
That's why we don't shoot animals in the front shoulders.
Because
and I believe we're eating them.
That's the definition of edible meat there.
Correct.
That's not considered edible meat.
Personally, I'll grab that I have a separate game bag for meat that I'm like, this isn't good meat. This is either this is unedible meat, but I'm going to take it out.
Yeah.
I've got, obviously if you're packing out, you're not going to do that.
No.
But if you're on a wheeler or something, it's not going to be a lot. And you just have that separate game bag. You can throw all that in and dispose of it later.
And here's something else I'll add to that. If you have the ability to take the ribs out on the bone, do it.
Yes.
Don't bone out ribs if you can get them out on the bone.
Mm-hmm.
If you're flying out and you're concerned about weight, then you can bone out the ribs. Do a rib roll.
Yeah.
If you're that concerned about bringing out the ribs, because the ribs are a lot of space, especially on like a caribou or, a moose is monstrous. It's like a half sheet of plywood. But if you have, if you are trying to save on weight, if you're on deer or goat or sheep or caribou hunts, and it is legal for you to take the rib meat out off the bone, then figure out, watch a video on how to do a rib roll and watch how that's done. And that gets you all of the rib meat off of the rib cage in its entirety to where all that's left on those ribs is white bone. Because that's a really easy spot.
It's one of the biggest spots.
That's an easy spot for you to just think, there's not that much meat here.
Yep.
It doesn't take much.
Yeah.
Someone told me at one point that the wanton waste law was that if they could get a handful of meat off of a carcass.
Okay.
Someone told me that. And then I heard your story.
Yeah.
And then I've heard other stories that are, this trooper, or not trooper, but this old timer told me that it was 2 handfuls. And this guy said that it was, 1 pound. And, everybody has their little theories about it. Don't play that game.
Yeah.
Don't leave anything there.
I've heard multiple stories as well. And the standard I run is whatever the smallest amount from the story that I've heard is. That's going to be my new standard. Because what that tells me is that is how small of an amount they can go. So I'm not, when they ask you about it and you say, well, that's not 2 handfuls. So-and-so told me 2 handfuls. They don't care. They're not going to care what so-and-so told you.
Right.
Because all they're looking at is edible meat. And you have to be worried about what the trooper on site is going to tell you. So
on the Fish and Game website, the more egregious charge of wanton waste carries a maximum penalty of 1 year in jail and a $10,000 fine. Ooh. Beware that Alaska regulations state that the horn, hide, or antlers may be taken out of the field only after the meat is packed out.
Yep.
Notice that differentiation between horn and antler.
Even the state got it right.
I should hope so. We put a lot of trust in those people.
There's another Alaska statute, 16.30.010, wanton waste of big game animals and wild fowl, is a Class A misdemeanor for a person who kills a big game animal or a species of wild fowl to fail intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or with criminal negligence to salvage for human consumption the edible meat of the animal or fowl. This is a Class A misdemeanor, up to 1 year in prison. This says up to a $25,000 fine.
That's because it's a Class A misdemeanor.
Yeah.
When I turned myself in on that bull that I shot that was too small, that's what he told me. It would be a Class A if I had been caught having not turned myself in.
Yeah.
If he came out to my moose camp and found me there with the game bags hanging and and measured the rack, and I said, he said if he came out to my camp and as soon as I saw him, I walked up to him and tried to turn myself in, he said I'd probably be too late.
Yeah. No, by that point, yeah.
He said, unless you can prove that you did not have a means of contacting me, right?
Right. So once you've done your due diligence and you've made sure you've cleaned up that kill site as best as you can, you've gotten everything that you can possibly take out to use. If you're empty, or if your quarters are still on the tarp without being in the game bags, that's where it really helps to get 2 people involved. One guy, at least 2 people involved. It is possible if you're by yourself. It just takes a little bit longer. But that's the point. You want to throw them in the game bags, get them protected from bugs and things like that, things of that nature, especially if it's warm outside. And there's 2 kinds of ways, or 2 kinds of scenarios you'll likely find yourself in. One is you're able to throw it directly onto a piece of machinery to get it out of there. If you're fortunate enough to have shot it on a trail where you have wheeler access, or right on the edge of a river where you have boat access, or you're about to do a lot of heavy hiking.
Yes. Yes.
And it is, in the event that you're able to get it out of there on a piece of machinery, it's very important to remember airflow when you're transporting this stuff and the heat of the engine. We ran into this issue with a side-by-side one time, throwing moose in the back of a side-by-side. The engine was directly underneath the bed of it, producing all of that heat and pushing that heat up into the bed. What that can do, if you have a long ride out, we had a very short ride out, but if you have a long ride out, you do not want that heat just building up in front of there. If you can build something up underneath it, such as, let's just say you have a pallet with you that can fit in there, a little half pallet or something, or you're able to build something.
Use some bows.
Some bows. Yeah, just anything to get a little bit of an air gap in there to where you can get some air flow as you're driving. That'll help dissipate that heat before it gets to the meat. But if you have to hike it out, it is very important to remember the situations you could find yourself in if something was to claim that meat while you're gone. Do everything you can to protect that meat and keep it hidden away, hung up, however you have to do it. You obviously want to keep it out of direct sunlight, so it's not getting beaten on while you're gone. You want to keep it protected from bugs and all of that, but making sure you have it either hung somewhere secure or stashed somewhere secure should be a priority before you hike those first quarters out.
Yes, I agree.
And then you're just making the hikes back to camp. As many trips as it takes to get all that meat out of the woods. And as we pointed out since the last couple of episodes, make sure that head is on your last trip out if you're on foot, or if you're able to get the whole thing out in one trip with a big enough piece of machinery, go ahead and throw it on top. Let's go ahead and take a break and we'll jump back in.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA. All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right, so once you've gotten to this point, and keep in mind, everybody, everything we just talked about with moose, for the most part, applies to any ungulate species here in the state of Alaska. The only difference being the ease at which everything is going to be achieved. We started with moose because it's the biggest, it takes the longest.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a deer or a caribou, it's the exact same process, just might be a little bit easier to throw those quarters around.
Yep.
With the exception of bear. Now, if you are skinning out a grizzly or brown bear or a black bear and you're trying to salvage the meat off the black bear, the skinning process, I believe we've talked about it before on the show.
Yeah.
We'll do more stuff on that in the future. But there's very specific ways you want to skin out a bear in particular for whether it's a rug or if you're trying to get it taxidermied.
Yeah.
You want to be very careful with that. But if you're salvaging the meat, even on a bear, you basically just follow the exact same steps we went through for a moose, and that goes for any ungulate species here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dalton, you've done quite a bit of commercial hunting with your time on this earth.
That's a fancy word.
You have helped non-residents come up here and achieve their dreams. So part of that is they're here getting an animal that they want to take home, they want to display in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, what would be the specific cuts you would go through if you're trying to bring the hide out in a way you would want to display it, if you were trying to cape that out for some kind of whether it's a shoulder mount or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the compliment, but I haven't been doing it for that long. A few years, albeit, and I've gotten the chance to do a number of animals.
Mm.
The most common way that clients come up on guided hunts and they want to bring home their trophy for a taxidermy mount is for ungulates, the shoulder mount.
Mm.
Now, this differs in one major way.
Okay.
You have to make your cut on the back, on the spine.
Yeah.
You can't go up on the belly
Mm-hmm.
and split that hide from the underside. You have to go in from the spine down and work your way down on the hide, which I dislike with a passion because you get inherently more meat, or I'm sorry, more hair on the meat in the
Mhm.
process. Even keeping your blade underneath the hair membrane, underneath that hide, you still get more hair on the meat.
It's just more exposure. Yeah.
Yeah. I really don't like doing it that way, but it is the only way to cape out an animal for a shoulder mount.
Okay.
Now, for a bear, you just skin the bear the exact same way that you always would.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about that before. We'll talk about it again at some point. When we kill a bear and we have a camera on site, we'll video the whole thing so we can show it to you guys. But for moose, caribou, sheep, mountain goat, black-tailed deer, things of that nature, you are, by and large, I would probably say 90+% of any animal except for dull sheep. Most guys just want a shoulder mount.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just to condense this in, and this is just going to be a quick version of the process of this. You're going to make that cut down the spine, either from the front back or from the back forward. Some guys do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their own little way. Stay underneath the hide. When you get that center cut done, then you make a cut down along the ribs.
Mm-hmm.
So going 90 degrees from that cut on the spine, you turn 90 degrees and make a cut down to the belly. And then you meet it on the other side with an equal amount of hide cut down.
Yep.
So you end up with a center cut down the back, and then you connect that cut underneath about a safe bet is halfway back the ribs. That way, the shoulders and everything is forward of that cut, so that's all going to be preserved.
And that's the base of your shoulder mount there.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, you want to cut off, you want to leave extra on that hide, right? So that the taxidermist has more hide than he really needs necessarily.
Right.
What you don't want to do is come up with that connecting cut underneath too close to the shoulder and not give him enough room for his mount.
Yeah.
Some shoulder mounts, some clients want to turn it into like a more of like a half body mount, right?
Yeah.
So if they want to change their mind, you want to give them that option. So cut off more hide than you necessarily need.
Mm-hmm.
From there, the back doesn't matter. You peel the skin down from the top down, you just kind of reverse the process. Everything else is similar, but a little bit different. From that point, you just get the hide off of the animal. With caping, I still like doing it one side then the other. You make that cut down on the one side. I don't worry about the other side yet. I make that center cut, make the cut down, and let's just say halfway back the ribs, just for example.
Yep.
Halfway down to the belly, to the bottom where you can reach with your knife blade. Then you make that ring cut around the bottom of below the knee joint on the leg,
Mm-hmm.
and then you split that hide. You split it on the inside of the leg, back up to the elbow joint.
Yeah.
Then you don't split anymore from there. Okay. Then from the top, you skin the hide down from the spine down over the quarter or over that shoulder until you get to that elbow joint. At that point, the quarter is in essence free of hide.
Mm.
Then you commence to push that elbow through that hole. It's ideal to have two people to do this.
Sounds like it.
Especially on a moose.
Right.
And you can push that leg back up through that hole, articulate that elbow joint, all the while you're skinning the hide underneath the armpit.
Yep.
And then freeing up that hide underneath of it.
Okay.
Then you bring the hide forward up to the base of the head at the neck. At that point, that flap is done on the back, peel it down, and then, skin, make a split cut down the leg. Because your cut is on the outside, on the uphill side of that hind quarter, you're not going to skin down the inseam of that thigh.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I just skin down the outside of the thigh, split that down to my ring cut below the knee, get the hide off the back end. Again, you're not preserving that. This is different for a life-size mount. We're not going to get into doing a life-size mount. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
That is not fun, really. It's a lot easier on like sheep and deer, but most guys don't do full body mounts on moose.
Right.
Very few do them on moose.
Very expensive.
And on caribou, yes, there are a number of guys that do full body mounts on caribou, but for the most part, it's mostly going to be shoulder mounts on anything except sheep.
Right.
In my experience, anyway. And then basically, once you have that one side freed up, you take off the quarters, take off the back strap, take off the ribs, get out the tenderloin on that side, get off all the neck meat, and then roll it over. And then you connect your other side from the spine cut down and then meet your other cut halfway down the ribs at the belly.
Yep.
So now you have half the hide on the front is connected for that shoulder mount. Repeat the same process on the other side. And that's how you do a cape. And then for the head, you're probably just going to get up to the base of the head, cut the head off, and then skin out the head. And then you're going to have to make that Y cut from the base of the skull up to each antler or horn. Some guys on a moose will do a T cut, just 90 degrees from their center line over to each antler. It doesn't really matter necessarily. If you know which taxidermist you're going to be using for your mount ahead of time, ask him.
Yeah.
Would you prefer a Y cut or a T cut to the antlers on this moose?
Right.
On a sheep, it's always going to be some kind of a Y cut because there's not as much space there. On deer, it can go either way, usually a Y cut from the back of the head over to each antler. Then you skin around the base of the antlers or the horns, and then you peel that triangular flap forward over the forehead, connect it around the eyes there, and then you case out the face. And then you got to skin out the lips, get the nose off. On a moose, it seems like that nose just goes forever.
It really does.
You've got to constantly skin around and pull and skin around and pull.
Yeah.
Especially if you got a nice big bull, that is no fun. It takes some time. Usually, that's a next day project.
I was going to say, is this something in the field if you're just trying to get it out of there?
I just get up to the base of the head, cut the head off,
take it back to camp.
That's tomorrow's problem.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
And that's exactly how we do it. If we're not trying to keep it, it's, like we talked about taking the flaps back so you can get to the neck meat and everything like that. You throw that in a game bag.
Yep.
And the head just comes off. You skin it out the next day.
Yep.
It's not something you need to worry about right on the spot.
Get up at that first vertebrae joint right there at the base of the skull. Get your knife in there. You do not need to cut that with a saw. You can do it with a knife. Don't worry about it. Just be careful with it. Find that little pocket in there. Pop that first vertebrae joint at the base of the skull. The atlas joint, is that what it's called?
It is, the atlas joint.
And then just do a little twist action. On a moose, you got lots of leverage.
Yeah, you do.
Pop that thing off of there. I'm making it sound easier than it really is on a moose.
It's not as hard as you'd think it would be, though.
But it's not rocket science, right?
Yeah.
It's just a joint. You know, if you've done knees, you can do a head. That's how I think about it.
Yeah. Once you kind of cut that membrane material around it, you get any of that fleshy material around it. You can just go right in between the joints, and it basically just pops right out.
Once you've got it freed up on both sides of that joint, give it a good twist and maybe, if you got all the neck meat off of it, step on that vertebrae with your foot. If you've got it pretty much cut all around it, and then just give it a good stomp with your boot, and it'll probably just break right off. Then whatever's left is tomorrow's problem.
Exactly.
So that's in a nutshell the caping process. Instead of going from the bottom up, top down, keep from the middle of the ribs forward. That's
the other thing I would say. Now I've never done that because every hide I've brought out has just been done the traditional way. But I would say leaving a little bit of extra is really enticing to me.
You have to.
Not only for the taxidermist, but also because it kind of gives you the freedom that if you do, let's just say you're in a rush or you're not in the best position to make a perfectly straight cut. If he has to trim it out a little bit during the process,
which he's going to
anyway, it's, give him plenty to work with.
Because he's going to have to even it up on the mount.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. You've got to give him extra.
Which then brings us back to where we left off. So when you get it, if you are headed back to camp, you're going to want to make sure you preserve that meat as best you can and take care of it before making the final journey home. Now, if let's say you're able to just go right back to the truck, take it right back to your house. And in a lot of cases, the same applies. You want to leave it hang for a little while, but especially important if you're hunting out of, say, a cabin or a camp where you're going to be out there for a couple more days before you're able to get out of there. Mo, you get a moose back to camp. What is the ideal spot you're looking for to hang a moose up?
In the shade.
In the shade. Yep.
It's like when I don't talk for a while, you'll look at me and ask me an easy question.
I like to hear your voice every once in a while. You're not going to get away with it that easy.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's funny because you guys, I'm going to talk about this for a minute. You guys will get on something and you're just saying everything I'm thinking, so I'll just let you go.
Great minds think alike, man.
See, I thought you were going to ask him, what's the first thing you do when you get the moose meat back to camp? The first thing I'm going to do with the moose meat when I get it back to camp is grab that tenderloin, put it on the old campfire,
slice it up.
Oh boy, that's
not.
And all you need is a little bit of salt and pepper.
God didn't let us have tenderloins to bring them home. Okay.
See, I wouldn't say that's the first thing I do, but that's definitely what I do before I go to bed.
So unless it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Even if it's 3 in the morning when I get back, I'm cooking something up.
A few years ago, we had my uncle out at moose camp.
Oh, yeah.
And the first, he was up here to kill a moose, but he wasn't first on the list because just, long story, and who all was out there and who get to kill a moose.
First on the trigger,
First on the trigger, right.
Yep.
And so somebody else out there with us shot a moose, and so we cut it up. And he used to be a chef, like a professional chef. So he sliced up that tenderloin, just a little bit of salt and pepper, and just got it like a perfect medium.
Just a little sear is all you need.
And
nice little sear.
It was. Exactly. I can say that is the best piece of meat I've ever had. It wasn't a few hours old.
Fresh, never frozen, man.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if he was even there when the moose was shot, but he came in later the day that it was.
Now I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Wasn't it gamey because it was so fresh?
What? What?
I hear that so much, and I don't get that.
I think that comes from whitetail.
Yeah, I can see that.
I've heard,
but even whitetail,
I've
had same day whitetail.
I'm not saying that's the way it is with whitetail.
I've heard a lot of guys up here that say that.
But I think the idea of that comes from traditional whitetail thought. Because it used to be, a lot of old timers will tell you got to hang a whitetail before you ever even start to cut it up.
I know guys that are born and raised in Alaska, and they preach that.
Really?
I don't eat meat inside of 48 hours of it being alive.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
And I forget all the reasons why, and I'm sure that they have their reasons. And you know what? That's fine for them.
It's all personal preference.
Give it to me. Right. If I'm hunting the same area that you are, just bring it to me. I'll take care of your problems for you. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of your tenderloins.
Yep. But like I said, that's not the first thing I do when I get back to camp.
Hang it up. You gotta hang it up.
Get that meat taken care of because you don't want to let anything go to waste while you're trying to enjoy one piece of it. And in a lot of cases, you got to dig through that bag to find the tenderloins anyway. So, So like you said, Mo, you want to find a shady spot. You want to find somewhere out of direct sunlight Preferably somewhere that's most likely to have some good airflow, whether that's under the best situation is if you can find a big tree that's not surrounded by a ton of little trees. That'll keep it shaded, but also allow the wind to kind of, and the breeze to kind of come through there.
So since you asked me the question, I'm going to continue on with it here. I got an opportunity to talk. I'm going to take it.
Hey, go for it, man. I thought you were done.
No, anyhow. So one thing you can do if you have a spot to hang it, and it's, because a lot of times it might be in the shade at one portion of the day and it's not another.
Oh,
right?
In most cases, I would say.
So, a lot of times if you have the capability, if you have a Sawzall with you or something, you're going to cut down a small pole, hang it between two trees, and you're going to hang your meat on that.
Yep.
And what we usually do is we'll just take a tarp, we'll hang it over it, but we'll hold it off the meat high and on the sides, just enough so it's not quite touching. And what that does, even when the sun's shining on the tarp, for one, it reflects heat. But there will be a little heat generated under the tarp, but that's going to flow out the ends of the tarp and go up like heat does,
just like
and
a
generate
little A-frame,
and it will generate airflow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And explain why you don't want the tarp to touch the meat.
Well, because if the tarp is touching the meat, when it sucks up heat, it's going to go right into the meat.
Exactly. And any kind of moisture or anything is going to get put back on the meat as well. You want that to be able to dry out and get that nice crust on there to protect it. So, but when you first hang the meat up coming back from camp, you find a nice spot with some airflow, a little bit of shade, even if you got to create your own shade. You really want to take the time. Now, if it's, super late at night, you're absolutely dog tired. You've been awake for 23 hours at that point or whatever it might be, right? It's okay to go take a power nap. But very quickly, before that meat starts to harden on the outside and get that crust going, you want to make sure you're going through and double checking that you did a good job keeping that meat clean. And I don't care how good you are, you're never going to have it perfectly clean when you get it back to camp. There's always going to be some hair. There's always going to be some sticks, some leaves. And you really want to go through and make sure you get all of that off. One thing I'll do is I'll even have like a little lighter with me sometimes. And you can go through, and if there's that little piece of hair that's just kind of sticking on there and you can't quite get it with your fingers, it's not coming off, you can just burn it up real quick.
Just singe it off.
Just singe it off. But doing that process, you'd be amazed the difference it makes.
Yeah.
And if you are taking it to a processor here in town to get it done, they'll notice. And I've heard some horror stories from those guys on the kinds of meat that they've been brought and how much they have to get rid of because of contamination and other causes like that. So making sure you get it nice and cleaned off is top priority. And then you want to actually clean the meat. The best way I know to do that is, I've said it before, but I'll bring if I have the ability to bring a spray bottle, I'll bring one or two, and actually in most cases 2 spray bottles with white vinegar in them. And you just go through, once you've got all the hair, all the sticks and everything off, you spray it down with white vinegar, and you take either a clean game bag or a clean rag of some sort, and you can actually wipe that meat down, make sure 100% you've got everything off of it. And then before you go to bed, before you leave it alone and just let it hang, give it another good spritz. Don't skimp on it. Spritz that down. What that does, that vinegar will keep the bugs away from it. So now you've got a barrier where the bugs aren't going to get to it, and it's going to help kind of propel that crusting phase.
The acidity of the vinegar will help crust that meat over.
Right.
Yeah.
And so once it's crusted, now you don't have to worry about flies landing on it and everything like that and laying eggs, because it produces that barrier. But you really, those first, I'd say 24 hours are the most important.
Yeah.
Because that's when it's the most vulnerable. After that, after it's been out in the air, it's been, the airflow's been hitting it, it's dehydrating a bit. Some guys will use a citrusy spray. And I think they even say that on the ADF&G website. That's what they recommend, is a citrusy spray. That'll work as well.
Yeah.
I've just always used white vinegar. It's worked well for me.
Yeah.
And it's usually just very easy to find.
Yeah.
Really old time method is salt.
Yeah.
But if you can bring enough salt out to salt down, all of the moose meat for you, you've got a big piece of machinery.
And if you're only going to be there a day or two, and for me, usually my meat's out of the field in a day or two.
Yeah. Even if you got to make a special trip.
Even if I'm making a trip to get it out, a lot of times even completely butchered in the freezer, and I'm back out in the field if I need to be, right?
Right.
But we get, I'll once it's in the game bags, it stays there.
Yep.
For, it just hangs up. If you've got good thick game bags, especially, if you're using some cheesecloth bags to keep some stuff separated, drop those into a good, high quality game bag from 60-inch Club. Right?
There you go.
Tie those up and hang them, under a tarp, like we talked about with it separated off. And if it's only a day or two, then you can just leave those just like that. They'll skin the bags themselves with the blood on them will skin over real good.
Yeah.
And you can haul them out, in a day or two and get them back, butcher them, and you're good to go.
Right. Yep. Now, one little trick, if you don't have good game bags, say you bought the little ones that have the
cheesecloth.
The little itty bitty tiny string on them.
Garbage.
The ones that break when you put a moose quarter in them.
Exactly.
Yeah, those again, are garbage.
Having some 550 cord can really be beneficial out there. That's why we say we put that in every hunt pack that we have, is because you can take that and you create a little 2.5 hitch knot. You loop it around either through that bottom tendon on 2 of the quarters, and then the other ones you can just create a loop and just tighten it right around that elbow joint there. And even if you're going to leave it in the bag, then all of the weight of the quarter is hanging on that 550 cord.
Right.
You push that out the face of the bag, or the hole at the top of the bag. You can bring it back down if you're worried about leaving any kind of a gap in your game bag. You bring it back down, loop it around the base of that joint again and through itself. That'll hold it nice and tight, so it seals off the top of that bag perfectly. And then hang it that way off your hanging pole, and you're perfectly good to go. And then you don't have to worry about having, if you sent somebody out to buy game bags and they bought the wrong ones, then you at least have a way of hanging it, Right. So always bring 550 cord. It's such a useful thing to have out in the field.
Here's my input on once you hang meat. I haven't had a problem with keeping bugs off of meat because I use higher quality game bags.
Yeah, that is a good point.
If you are using cheesecloth game bags, then you need to spray that down with white vinegar once you hang them.
Yeah.
Because the flies will lay eggs on the meat because that cheesecloth is not protecting the meat from the flies and the bugs and whatnot. If you are using a high quality game bag, now obviously we're going to recommend the 60-inch Club game bags with handles. They are made out of material that bugs cannot lay eggs through. Also, it keeps the meat clean.
Yeah.
If you followed the process that we entailed earlier in the podcast about keeping the meat clean, the whole butchering process, you will have a lot less work to do when you get back to camp as far as getting any hair off of the meat, any sticks or twigs or moss or things. I understand that the meat gets dirty, especially if you kill the moose in a swamp and it dies half in the water. Okay, it's going to be dirty. Get it back, hang it by that big tendon that goes along the underside of the elbow of that lower half of the quarter. Run some cordage through that. Hang that off your meat pole that you're going to have to build, and sleeve the game bag off of it. Expose that meat 1 quarter at a time, and clean it off. Maybe spray it down with vinegar to help increase that, to help accelerate the crusting process. Put the game bag back on it.
Yeah.
Keep the flies off of it, even if it's crusted.
Yeah.
Don't leave it exposed.
Yeah.
Once you clean it and prep it, if you want to spray down with vinegar, or if you want to rub it down with black pepper, or spray down with if you want to spray the meat down with like a lime or lemon juice blend, that's fine too. But put the game bag back on it.
Yeah.
That'll also keep the birds from being able to peck through and get at it.
Right.
The gray jays or the ravens or whatever else might find its way to your meat pole, they're going to have a harder time getting to it if it's in a nice thick game bag like these 60-inch Club bags are.
Yep.
Right here in the features that Troy has on the website, I'm looking at it right now. Protects meat from dirt and debris. Fabric breathes and wicks moisture away from the meat. 100% washable. Okay, these are strong, tough game bags. Obviously, they have handles on them. They're stout game bags, but they protect the meat from the bugs and from the debris.
Yeah.
So that you can lay the meat down in the grass or on the tundra or something, and it's not just going to stick to the meat like
Right.
it would if you're using a cheesecloth game bag and you set that game bag down on the tundra. Whatever the meat's setting in is what's going to be on the meat.
Exactly.
It will be on the meat if it's in a cheesecloth game bag.
Yeah.
That's why we recommend real, reusable, washable game bags, not the cheesecloth ones.
Well, and if you, for whatever reason, have some of these, there's some other brands that they're very good at keeping the meat clean.
Yeah.
And these are just, regular old box store brands.
Yeah.
That a lot of people are likely to have in their kit,
Yep.
but they don't breathe very well. That is one thing I like about with his ones. With the 60-inch club, those ones will breathe well.
Yeah.
And that's very important for the meat care process too, because what you don't want to do is put that bag over it if it's going to create a humid environment in there,
Moisture trap.
and hold that moisture.
Right.
Yeah, you
Right.
want it to breathe that moisture off, because
Exactly.
holding that moisture in will actually prevent the crusting process, and you run the risk of spoiling the meat as well.
Yep.
So make sure you have a good breathing game bag that is thick enough to keep bugs off of it, keep sticks out of it, keep and everything like that, and you'll be good to go.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
and then from there, you pretty much just cut off pieces and do exactly what we just talked about until you're ready to go home and enjoy some of that moose out there.
Mm-hmm.
On the way home, again, remember it's the same process. You want to make sure you have either, I think at one point you had mentioned your 4-wheeler ramps or something like that can make a good barrier. If you're throwing a moose in the back of a truck or something like that, or even in a boat, you want to make sure it's not just on the floor. Keep it elevated just a little bit, just so air can get underneath it and flow around it.
Yep.
And once you get it home, that's when the fun part begins.
Yes.
That's when you start being able to actually process it into fill in the freezer.
Yeah.
And and that's when you really start to feel good about that hunt. When you are cutting a moose up or cutting a caribou up, and you just get to watch that freezer fill up a little bit more at a time, and a little bit more at a time.
You get to come home, hang it up underneath your deck or underneath the carport or something. Or if your garage is nice and cool, you can hang it up in there.
Yeah.
In the fall time. You can go take a shower, change clothes,
Exactly.
come out there, get the grinder out, and then start deboning, and then commence to grinding and cutting up roasts and whatever else you want to do with it.
Yeah.
Slice it into jerky pieces. My wife and I actually, kind of a little side note here, after our blacktail hunt here in August, we ended up making some blacktail jerky. Now, I'm a notorious backstrap hoarder. In my freezer, I've still got several backstraps from a few different animals over the last couple of years that I just kind of sit on. That
it's a delicacy.
Every once in a while, I'll grab one and make a dinner out of it. Right? I don't just like to mow through those all first.
It's not what the friends get when they come over for dinner. They're not getting the backstrap.
Yeah, you're on to me. Yeah. But when we got home and my wife and I were cutting up our couple of deer that we'd killed down there, my wife made the comment. She said, well, we already have so much backstrap, and why don't we try making some jerky? And I said, woman, that's like sacrilegious. This is backstrap. And I don't know if she'd seen a recipe specifically for backstrap jerky, or if she just wanted to try that because it was going to be the best chance of it turning out really, really good. And so we gambled, and she thin sliced some backstrap from those blacktail deer, put them in the dehydrator after a good seasoning and like a nice marinade, and it is great. I'm glad that we did it and experimented with it. It was a risk, albeit it was a big risk with being backstrap. And this story would have a very different ending had it not turned out very good. I'd just be a depressed, backstrapless hunter. But it did turn out really, really good. So we decided that the next animal that we are going to process, whatever that ends up being, whether it's a moose or a caribou or or just more deer later on in the season, if we go again, then we're going to do some more jerky in for sure.
Wow.
And we'll probably end up taking some of those hindquarter roasts that would normally just become roasts, all that nice, big chunks of roast meat that's always just looks so good after you debone that at home.
Yeah.
I think we're going to turn a lot of that into jerky and just make a ton of it.
Yeah, and we'll get into that because that's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
But it is important what you said. When you first get home and you're cleaning up and you're getting everything going, making sure you still take care of that meat. Don't just leave it hanging or sitting in the back of the truck or wherever it might be. You still want to find a nice place to hang it up. The last thing you want to do is get complacent, part way through the process and end up losing, a certain amount of poundage of the meat that you salvaged.
Yeah.
Due to just being tired, being in a rush to get home and get clean. And it's easy to understand. You spend 10 days out in the woods somewhere,
Yeah.
Nice to come home and take a shower,
Oh, yeah.
But focus on the process. Make sure you're hanging it up until you're ready to cut up.
Yeah.
Now, we're obviously not going to have time to go into every single cut of meat, every single individual muscle or anything like that. But a few of our favorites are, as you had said, the big, nice roasts that come off those hindquarters.
Oh, yeah.
That is some great steak material, great roast material, great just full on slabs, and you take that hindquarter apart just piece by piece. We'll do a nice video at some point. I'm sure there's a couple of other instructionals out there that do a pretty good job of showing it if you're curious on what that process looks like. But making sure you get it done in a timely process. I have done moose where I was only able to dedicate a certain amount of hours during a heavy work week, in the evenings to it.
Right.
Didn't have a lot of time to go on the hunt in the first place. We managed to be successful over, a 2-day trip that we were able to take.
Yeah.
And it was basically just anything after the 12-hour days we were working was dedicated to taking that thing up.
Right.
Do not recommend doing that. We were so tired. And so just
just cash in a sick day.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can take a sick day, if you and, your hunting partner or you and your wife or whoever, are able to just sit down and dedicate a full day. In a lot of cases, you can get through a majority of that moose, especially if you're doing a lot of ground.
Yep.
But
which
make sure
we do.
Yeah. Moose is, I turn a lot of moose into ground meat.
I turn a lot of everything into ground meat.
Do you?
A lot of it. Yeah.
I would say primarily for me, it's moose and bear. It is majority ground. But what the process you want to focus on is making sure you get it sealed properly. Yeah. And by sealed, I mean in a vacuum sealer. You don't need to take it down to the state and do that process. You want to make sure you have a good vacuum sealer that can stand up to the job.
Yep.
Don't go buy the cheapest one you can find at the Sportsman's Warehouse. It'll, in most cases, I've seen them overheat where they just stop vacuuming, they stop working.
Yep.
And the same goes for a grinder. Make sure you get a grinder that's up to the task of a moose if that's what you're tackling this year.
Yep.
You can get it done with like a half horse, 3/4 horse is better if you're going to be going that route. Anything above that's really more industrial sized, but they
sure
sell
is
them.
Nice if you got it.
So sure is nice if you got it. Exactly. It's going to be, you're going to have a lot less heat building up in that in that center or that center part there, and when you're really going at the burger and you're just doing pound after pound after pound, pushing it through that thing. I mean, it's amazing how much heat those grinders can build.
I just wish they would make a big old grinder that had a hole about 4 inches around.
Right? Wouldn't it be nice?
Could just pack in big old chunks of moose meat because it takes forever to shove an entire moose's worth of ground meat through a stupid little inch and a half opening on a grinder. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, James, you mentioned a vacuum packer, but I'm one of 6 kids in a family.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't live at home anymore, but my parents. Right. My parents and my family, they consume, almost a moose's worth of meat in a year.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Now, because of that, or a year or two, and a moose is gone. Right. If it takes longer to get a moose, then slow down a little bit. Right.
Yeah.
You miss a moose a year, slow down, save some of that for next year. But they will eat. They don't vacuum pack any of it.
Really?
Yeah, roasts.
We don't vacuum
steaks,
pack anything either.
They wrap.
Really?
They wrap in a like
the first two I've met
in like a saran wrap and then a freezer paper.
Yeah,
wrap it tightly like that. Dry it off a little bit. You don't want it super wet when you do that, and then ground meat, and the same thing for bear, caribou, whatever. Just freezer bags.
Wow.
Ziploc freezer bags.
Yeah.
Quart size.
Ziploc freezer bags. No
And
kidding.
you can get a
And you've
pound
never
of
had
meat.
anything go freezer burnt?
Not if you eat in a couple of years. No.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
it's
I've always
quick.
vacuum sealed everything.
It's quick. It's easy.
I had always.
and you don't have to buy a vacuum sealer.
Yeah. Well, they're not super expensive if you do go that route, but honestly, the vacuum sealers are super quick and easy too. Especially if you get the ones that do the self, you make your own size bags. So the one I have, it has the, I think it's 11-inch wide, and you just have a roll that sits in there. And so as it's sealing, you basically you just seal one end of it. You draw it out as long as you need that piece to be. It has a little cutter in the machine itself, so you just cut it to length. Throw your meat in there. It vacuums within a couple of seconds, really. If you have like a really big roast, it can take 30 seconds maybe to vacuum seal it. And then it self-seals itself and it's all good to go.
I will say, I've had vacuum sealed meat that was freezer burned.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've had packs that got damaged when they go in the freezer if you're not careful when you put them in there. And then, so if you break that seal at any point, like let's say it gets up against another sharp piece of meat or something like that, and it just punctures through that plastic, then yeah, I've seen that happen too.
Right.
But never while it's still in a sealed bag before. Not in my experience.
I've had meat go bad in vac sealed bags before. I don't know if it was just not quite sealed right. Like if the vac sealer, had a little malfunction and it didn't quite get all the air out of it.
Which is very possible.
And I think that's probably what it was. I've had my wife and I have had a few of those instances over the few years now that we've been doing that. After, let's see, not long after we'd gotten married a few years ago now, the first animal, it was probably a black bear because we got married before bear season, like a man should do. Try not to interfere with the anniversary during bear season.
Right.
Which ironically, I spent my first anniversary in guide camp. So I missed my first anniversary out guiding. So
yeah, you're one to talk.
Yeah. Props to me. But anyway, I remember that the first animal that I shot, I think it was later on that spring, I shot a black bear over one of my baits. And my wife and I were cutting up this bear, and we got to the point where we were gonna make the decision on how to bag it up. And she said, "Well, we're just gonna use freezer Ziploc bags."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, why don't we just use a vac sealer?" And she said, "Well, this works just as well.
Yes.
I have a ton of bags, and it only works. And really, I haven't done the math. It's just the way that she prefers doing it. She likes using whatever size freezer Ziplocs.
Yeah.
I'm sure at some point it'd be more cost effective just to get a big vac sealer. At some point, you're going to catch up to it with Ziploc cost.
Yeah.
But she prefers it because, like I said, at this point, we've had several different vac seal bags freezer burn the contents of it because the vac sealer didn't quite get all the air out of it.
Well, and all it takes
I'm wondering about how much of that was user error.
All it takes is a little bit of blood in the seal area or moisture.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I mean by user error is if you're not paying attention to that and you make sure you're not making sure that it's a clean seal
now,
and a clean
with
vacuum.
With a Ziploc, we are very meticulous about, squishing that Ziploc flat and then filling up all the air gaps in it.
Yeah.
And then sealing it.
Yeah.
And we haven't had any meat ever go bad in a Ziploc bag. Now, we go through, even just the two of us, we go through a lot of meat in a year. We don't buy meat at the grocery store. We just don't.
Yeah.
And so for us, we go through it quickly enough that we don't have 4-year-old meat in the bottom of our freezer. So we haven't reached the point where we've been able to find out if long term, if it lasts. But it doesn't matter to us because we go through it fast enough.
Well,
go
ahead.
No, I was going to say that we rotate through it quickly enough that we don't have that issue.
Right.
Well, and that's what's interesting about it is because, it kind of depends on each person's experience because the only game meat I've ever had go bad was actually saran wrapped in freezer paper. So it kind of depends on...
If we saran wrap it, we double wrap it.
Yeah. But so it kind of depends on your experience level and your comfort level. Yeah. I like vacuum seal bags. I feel like it's faster.
There's
it's more
nothing
cost effective.
Wrong with it, yeah.
Right. And so for me, that's what works for me. Yeah. I can vacuum up a moose in no time. A lot faster than I'd be able to saran wrap it if you ask me. But the most important part to focus on is just that you're getting that air away from the meat while it's there. You're putting a barrier there.
Right.
And so if you're going to be putting it in, saran wrap or freezer bags or freezer paper or anything like that, you just want to make sure you do a really good job of sealing it up because that's what's going to preserve your meat. And whichever method you take, just make sure you do a diligent job.
I will definitely say, and that this is not to say that I have a problem with vac sealers.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I do want to buy a big, more industrial-sized vac sealer.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a couple of them used. I've used one particular kind that I'm thinking of. I don't know the brand of it, but I know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it works great. It's big. It's not these tiny little ones that you can have more of those problems with, and it's not cheap. The one particular one that I'm thinking of it looks like a big air fryer type unit.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it, it's got like a little plastic cover that goes over the top. When you close that and you have the seam of the bag sticking out of it, you close it, boom, it kicks on, goes through the process. It has an auto shut off when it hits the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You open it up, inspect it, make sure the seal's good, move on.
Yep.
I really like that kind of vac sealer.
So I've used one of those too.
The one I have it's the Food Saver model.
Okay.
It's a little over $100.
Yeah.
And I've personally done multiple moose and caribou with it.
Yeah.
Without it overheating, without it malfunctioning.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just a testament to their brand specifically. Maybe there's a couple other ones. I think Sportsman's has their own proprietary brand that they sell there.
Okay.
I don't remember the name of it right now. I'm not able to think of it, but
yeah.
But I've used that one with great success, and it really depends on the quality that they put into when they make it.
Yeah.
If you buy a cheap product, you're going to get cheap results.
Yeah.
So, and that's just the way it is.
I think the one that Dalton and I have both used was like a Vac Master or something like that.
Okay.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
That's closer to, depending on the size you get, that's closer to like $1,000.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or easily, depending on what you get.
Wow.
I mean, you can easily spend a couple
Yeah.
grand.
I mean, this thing was
Really?
top.
You talk
tier.
about,
Really nice.
yeah.
Wow.
Very, very nice.
Yeah, I've used it. It has a lot of those same features. It does,
Yeah.
you can size the bags yourself.
Mhm.
It has the auto off feature when it gets done
Yeah.
vacuuming. It auto seals, and then you just lift the bag out, and
Yep.
you're good to go.
Yeah.
So, no complications to it. I mean, we've done, it works super quick.
Yeah.
But again, the biggest part, like you pointed out, with having blood in the seal or anything like that, if you have a lot of blood that's going to be kind of in the top of the bag as it's being vacuumed shut, you're going to probably end up with air gaps. And another thing too to keep in mind is if you are vacuum sealing, to make sure you're looking at the shape of the meat that you're putting in there, because if you have something that maybe has, a bit of a point to it, to where the vacuum sealer behind it leaves an air gap, you are going to run into issues.
Right.
But that's for a lot of your slab style meat, right? Your roasts, your steaks, your anything like that. You can run them through a cuber if you want to. Some people really prefer that.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan. I don't know. I don't really see a huge difference there, but
I don't cube anything up until I thaw it out to cook it.
yeah.
Even if I have a nice chunk of roast, if I have a bunch of roast chunks and I want to make steak bits, just thaw out a roast and cut it up.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Well, and I just like regular old moose steak, man.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
a big moose steak is just, you can't beat
I'm
it.
a big
You don't need to
fan
do
of
anything
steak
extra
bits.
to it.
I really like
So
steak
bits are nice too.
So what I'll do is when I have, especially on a moose, you'll end up with a lot of meat that's not roast
Mm-hmm.
sized, and it's too nice to make burger out of.
Yeah.
And I'll dice that up into like 2-inch chunks
Yeah.
and make packages of that,
Yeah.
and just
Yep.
label it stew or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that's easy to open up and dice up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And because that way it doesn't go to burger.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much of that stuff you save out, you'll still have plenty of burger off of
Yeah.
the moose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even a small chunk of moose meat is a real nice, healthy sized. Keep up with my words here, but fillet mignon.
Yep.
I heard somebody call it that one
Took
time.
me a moment. I'm like, what? Oh,
I heard somebody say that one time, that they said fillet mignon, and I looked at him and I'm like, he really doesn't know. It's filet mignon. And so now whenever I'm going to say it, I always just say it fillet mignon.
There you go.
I just get a kick out of it.
So the last thing I'll say when you're packaging up like steaks or anything like that is one thing we like to do is package up more than one at a time. So if I have, it's me and my wife in the house. If I'm cooking moose steak, chances are I'm not just cooking one. So a lot of the times I'll take and do multi-packs. I'll do 2 steaks to a pack or something like that.
Yeah.
And then just kind of, you have the freedom when you're doing this yourself. And sometimes, depending on who you have processing, if you are going to take it to a processor, you have a little bit of freedom there too. Yeah. They'll ask you, do you want 2 steaks to a pack, 1 steak to a pack? Do you want 2 pounds of burger per bag or 1 pound of burger?
Basically meal planning.
But you can meal plan. Yeah. You can kind of plan ahead to how many packets you're going to have to take out at a time. And that really does help. And that makes the process of cooking later a little bit faster.
Absolutely.
When it comes to burger, I am going to go against the grain of what traditionally I've heard from a lot of hunters since I've lived here, which is I keep, as I'm trimming everything out for my roasts, my steaks, my everything out, I will take the large chunks of fat off typically, but I will save them. I think moose fat in moose burger is the way to go. I've tried both directions, and honestly, after doing it with moose fat, I'll never go back. There's a lot of misinformation about it souring, about it going rancid after 6 months in the freezer or something like that. With proper storage, you never have to worry about that. We grab those round bags. You can get them in packs of 100 at a time. They've got the little like staple clips, and you grab that little tool. You can just close it off real quick. And
like a little crimp lock.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing I like about those, if you're going to go that route, there's two methods you can use for burger. Is as you're grinding it up and you're filling these tubes, they have a 1 pound marker on the bag.
Yeah.
So you know exactly when you've hit that 1 pound mark. You just twist the bag off. You hit it with that little clamp, or you can even just wire tie it or whatever you want to. Whatever's going to keep it closed and keep it airtight.
Right.
And boom, that's all she wrote. You've got a pound of burger to just throw in the freezer right there.
Right.
But the other method you can use is one that I've heard a lot of people talk about recently, which is using, like you guys had mentioned, more like freezer, Ziploc style freezer bags.
Yep.
And then as you're putting your 1 to 2 pounds, whatever, like we just talked with meal planning, whatever you think you'll use in one sitting, put it into a freezer bag like that, and you're able to flatten it out into more of a pancake style. And if you have a stand-up freezer, that stacks a lot easier. Mm-hmm. You're able to keep a lot more in there. And then when you go to thaw it out, it'll be thawed in,
thaws out
30 minutes.
Much faster.
Because the surface area is just so much more. The meat's spread out.
Right.
So you can, if you get home and you're tired and you just want to make some muschetti or something like that, and you don't have all the time, you didn't pre-think to take it out of the freezer before you left for work, don't worry about it.
Put it in a sink of hot water.
Put it in the sink. It'll be thawed in no time.
Yeah. I have a question about that moose fat. And like with the bear fat, obviously bear fat, you try to save as much as you can. Yeah. With the moose fat, I have had the experience of it clogging up a grinder very quickly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, is that an issue you've had at all?
Never. No.
What kind of grinder do you have?
My buddy has one. He bought it at Sportsman's. Okay. I usually go over to his house. It's a 3/4 horse, whatever brand they sell.
Is it OEM?
I think so.
It's just like I found it can slow down very, very quickly.
Now, what we'll do when we're mixing fat into the meat is we'll run just the meat. So we'll usually grab several big tubs, big Rubbermaid tubs, and we'll throw just meat in 1 or 2 of them, however much burger meat we're going to have, and then we throw just fat in the other. We'll grind up all the meat first, just meat. Then you calculate up roughly how many pounds you've got. Then you calculate roughly how many pounds of fat you want to add into that to get your 80-20 mix or your 90-10 mix or whatever you're trying to get there.
Way more.
If I'm going to go through all the work of getting a moose home, I'm not skimping at this end.
No. What I mean is like at that point, I am, so say you use beef suet or something.
Right.
You grind up the beef suet, you grind up the meat, and then you run it through the grinder again together.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But it's just kind of you dump it in and you mix it and say, it looks about right, and you run it through.
No, I get real scientific with it. So like I said, if I'm going to go through all that work, I'm getting what I want at the end product. So, but then, we figure out how much fat we want to grind up. You grind that independently. And I've never had it jam up before.
Do you try to freeze it or something beforehand or cool it down?
So chilling it a little bit beforehand does help.
Okay.
So if you have the ability to say cut up your meat package up all your steaks and all your roasts and everything one day, and let the even if it's only for an hour, if you put that fat in the freezer for like 30 minutes even, it'll stiffen it up just a little bit. That'll also keep your grinder cool as it's going through because it's cooling as it's going. And then once you get those two ground up, just like you said, you just throw them all in the same tub, you mix them together, and then you run it through one more time.
Have to try that.
Yeah. And everything I've heard, moose fat smells bad. Oh, it goes rancid after some time. It's the fat that came with the animal. It's the fat that's meant to be on the animal. And if you haven't tried it, I mean, definitely, I'll say this, give it a taste test. Like we said, you can cook it right. You don't have to let it, age or anything like that. If you want to take a little piece of moose fat with a little piece of meat and cook it up real quick on a cast iron and give it a taste, I would highly recommend that, because chances are, if you like moose, you'll like moose with the moose fat.
So while we're on the grinding and the burger part, something I like to do with a portion of my burger after it's already been run through and it's been mixed with the fat, run through twice, run it through a third time. Take a portion of it, maybe run it through with some jalapenos.
Oh yeah,
or some cheese or some cheddar. Onions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have.
And you said I was getting fancy with it for measuring my fat.
Well, I don't measure how many jalapenos I put in either. I just go, that looks about right. I take that jar of canned jalapenos.
There you go. Yep.
And just start sprinkling them in.
Yep. Yeah. And and some people, if you really can't get over the thought of the moose fat, you can usually get some kind of fat from a butcher.
Beef suet is probably the best substitute.
Beef would be the best. Pork, if you're doing, some kind of breakfast sausage or anything like that. But realistically, the fat that came with the moose is the best there. And like you said, I mean, you add anything, you start adding those seasonings and everything. Now, one thing I'll point out, when you're running it through multiple times like that, you want to use the head on the grinder that has the larger holes on the end of it. That way, because if you grind it too many times through too small of a head, it'll just end up falling apart when you put it in. When you make it into a patty and everything, and you cook it up, it's just going to fall apart because there's nothing holding it together anymore.
Right. So let me add to what you were saying there.
Yeah.
You keep referencing moose, about using moose fat.
Yes.
If I shoot a black bear, black-tailed deer, moose, caribou, and it has fat on the meat, which it does.
Yep.
It gets ground up.
Yes. It applies to everything.
Not just moose.
I'm just using moose because that's the example we're on.
Just to be clear, but
right, yeah.
I know we're all on the same page there, but if the animal that we shoot has the meat that we want to eat,
right.
Why would I throw away the fat?
Exactly.
That's my opinion. So if it has fat, it goes in the burger.
Yep.
That's just how it is.
And then, so to just tee off this.
Okay.
The last things I'll do is, if I have a nice slab that I want to turn into jerky, making sure you have even cuts as you're making those jerky slices is paramount. I have tried to just use like the little trimmings off the edges or whatever, and you get different thicknesses and different sizes. It's so complicated to dehydrate it all to the same level.
Yeah.
There's different even kits that you can get that have like an indentation in a cutting board where you can change your depth and make sure you're slicing at the same depth every time. My brother got me one of those for Christmas one year, and it's been awesome. I love that thing.
Nice.
It's so fast. It's so easy.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. They
having like a little, just having a little form that you can just slice, slice.
Yep. You slice it. You pull that last bit you sliced out, slap it right back on the cutting board, slice it again, and it's always the same thickness.
You can always buy a commercial meat slicer.
You could. Yep. While you're spending,
while you're buying that $1,000 vacuum sealer. Yeah.
Don't. If all you do is a couple of animals a year, do not buy the $1,000 one. Get this couple $100 at most one. It'll do you just fine.
I will say it's nice. It's so nice.
I'm sure it is, but I'm not going to recommend the average Joe go out and buy a $1,000 vacuum sealer.
Yeah. I just for clarifying my opinion about it, I don't want to sound like I'm against vac sealers at all, right?
It's just your experience, yeah.
My folks, as a teenager, my folks vac seal all of their cuts.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the bigger roasts, obviously that they'll saran wrap those and then freezer paper, just that wax paper and then tape it up. Obviously, the freezer paper is not to seal up the air gaps; it's to prevent against getting some of that freezer burn that'll penetrate through that saran wrap.
Right.
But the saran
That's
wrap,
why you want a double layer.
Right. The saran wrap is to keep the air out of it.
Correct.
And it's sometimes hard to do that if you have a nice big chunk of roast, but it's kind of uneven. Obviously, it's going to be uneven. It's in soft form. It's not frozen hard yet. You need to make sure that you wrap that really, really tight around that chunk of meat. And then all of their burger, they put in those 1 pound tube.
I love those.
Like
things.
those big white sausage bag looking things.
Yep.
Then they twist them and they use that little metal crimp ring.
Yep.
With that little plier that goes on there.
Yeah.
And I've had mixed results with those little crimp rings over the years. That's not my favorite way to do it.
Yeah.
And then they vac sealed all of their smaller chunk stuff that they could fit in vac seal bags. Doing the Ziploc bags, I feel like personally, I prefer that over using those little twist white 1 pound bags, those little cylindrical.
It's a little more functional
bags.
when you do it that way. Yeah.
Like I said, until my wife and I started processing game together, I now that I'm thinking about it, we might have actually done a few animals before we even got married. Over at her parents' house in her dad's shop there. And she said that, well, no, I don't use those twist bags. I just use Ziplocs. And okay, all right, that's fine. It's how she did it.
Yeah.
I had my way of doing it. It is what it is. It's fine. But she is very thorough in making sure that all the Ziploc is flat and there's no air gaps in there.
Yep.
And that works good for us with the ground meat. And then anything else outside of that, then we'll double saran wrap it and then freezer paper that.
Yeah.
If at some point, obviously at some point, I want one of those real nice vac sealers. But for the time being, for what we're doing right now, we found that the Ziplocs work fine. It's really a matter of personal preference. If you don't want to go out and experiment and try using a vac sealer, it's fine to use Ziplocs for all of your ground meat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend necessarily using big Ziplocs for chunks of meat because it's going to be nigh to impossible to get all of the air gaps out of chunks of meat in a Ziploc bag. That's where you're going to run into real trouble.
Well, and I think that's where I have the kind of similar but opposite experience is having meat go bad from not using a vac sealer.
Yeah.
And again, it's all what your experience is. It's all, and that's why the most important thing is just being thorough in whichever method you use.
Right. For us,
whichever way is more cost effective for you. If you can't afford a vac sealer, if you get one of these ones that's only, $100, $200, something like that. Right. You'll reach that cost in Ziplocs pretty quick if you're doing a whole moose. Even at $10 a bag or $10 a box of bags. Tongue twister there. But, it's whatever works for you, whatever you're comfortable with leaving it in there because you're going to be leaving it in there for a while.
Yeah. And you have to think about how much of it do you want to burger? We burger a lot of the animal. Yeah. We don't have a whole lot of roast chunks. We don't do a whole lot of steak bits. We do some, but we don't do enough that we can justify right now that what we like, we can't justify going out and buying the vac sealer that I want. Right.
Yeah.
So for us, because we grind up so much of it between breakfast sausage and then dinner ground up without any of the breakfast sausage seasonings, we grind up so much of it that what's left that is, chunk meat or roasts, we just wrap that, right? Yep. So for us, that system works. If you're going to not grind up as much of it, then it's probably a better idea for you to just get a vac sealer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I landed. Yep. It just depends on what you want to do with the majority of the meat.
And that's the best part about hunting and getting to do it all yourself is it's all up to you, your preferences, and how you want it. Here's to wrap up.
Well, just hold on.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sorry.
We're going to keep going about this for an
hour. I think we're going to lose some listeners right here.
I was going to say, we're just doing too long.
Here's the best advice for you. Do it one way with one moose.
Yeah.
Next year, go shoot another moose and do it a different way.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Just keep shooting
Try
moose.
It out.
Just keep shooting moose.
Absolutely.
That wasn't so bad, was it?
One a year.
One a year. except for proxy tags. But that's a whole other topic.
Or husband, wife.
Speaking of which,
come on.
my father-in-law is now old enough for proxy to give me proxy tags. So.
Very nice.
Oh, yeah.
So the last two things I'll mention that we do is when you're using, whether or not you're using the moose fat for the burger, you're going to end up with extra leftover. There's so much, if you get a good fatty moose. Sometimes they're super lean, especially in the late season. But but if you get a good fatty moose, chances are you'll have some left over. There's actually a pretty decent amount of fat. On a lot of them. One thing we like to do is we will render that down into tallow, moose tallow, which is super useful around the house for pan searing anything. If you're going to be cooking in a cast iron, you can take a nice dollop of that in a big spoon, drop that in the cast iron, and that's perfect. It's a high heat cooking oil.
Does it separate
basically
out in the jar?
It does. Well, no. So what you do is you take whatever moose chunks you've got left over and you put them in a big pot on low heat. That's the key. Low heat.
And this is a fat.
This is the fat. Yeah. So you're going to take whatever fat chunks you have left over. You take a big, preferably stainless steel pot, and you put it on very low heat.
Okay.
And what you're going to do, and by very low, I don't mean actually low on the stovetop, but about the first quarter.
Okay.
Heat. And what that does is that allows the fat to melt, not burn. You're not cooking it; you're just melting it.
Okay.
And as you do that process, eventually you'll get a layer of liquid on the bottom, and every impurity that's in that fat, any meat that might be left on the cut from when you were trimming, anything that might not be pure fat will rise to the top of that fluid. Now, as you're going, you just keep adding chunks. And they will melt as well and just add to that fluid. And as things rise to the top, you take a little, whatever you would call that, a
ladle.
Ladle. They have ones that have mesh in them. That's what I was trying to think of the name of. But it's a ladle with mesh in it. And you can just kind of scoop and skim that stuff off the very top, leaving the liquid underneath.
Do you eat those?
Yeah. Called cracklins.
Yep.
You put them on like a cookie sheet or something with some paper, and you just let them dry out, and they get nice and crispy. It's like moose bacon. But and then once you've got that in a full liquid form, the interesting part is you're going to see it simmering, almost like it was water, right? It's going to be simmering. It's going to be it's more like oil, but it's going to be a simmering oil.
Yeah.
When it stops simmering is when you've gotten everything out of it, because what's actually bubbling up is
the impurities.
Interesting. Yeah. And so don't let it fool you. It's still extremely hot, even though you can't see it bubbling. But so then at that point, once you can look at it and it's no longer simmering, but you know it's still hot, that's when it's ready to come off the oven or off the stove.
I think I've got another podcast idea when we start launching more podcasts called Moose Grease.
Might run into some issues with that one.
We just created a conflict right there. Good job, Mariah.
You like that?
Yeah.
But so once you get it in that realm, what I like to do is you let it cool for a little bit. You don't want to let it harden, but you let it cool for a little bit.
Yeah.
At the same time, you turn the oven on warm, just warm, and you throw whatever mason jars or any glass that you're going to be using in the oven. Let those temperatures get closer to each other, because you don't want to put boiling oil into room temperature glass or even cold glass. It's not going to end well for you. So make sure you warm up the glass a little bit.
Yeah.
You cool off the oil a little bit. Those temperatures are closer together. You can pour that oil into that mason jar just fine. Seal it off on the top. It's shelf stable for. I've had a jar that is almost 2 years old now.
Wow.
And it's still good. We still use it. So
wow.
So that's a great way to utilize the fat. And then the last thing we'll do is once we get all the meat processed, we'll take the bones, whatever leg bones that are left. We'll keep the vertebrae in most cases if we can get the spine out of the woods. But especially those leg bones, we'll take them, we'll cut them into what I just call slow cooker size pieces. So generally 5 inches, something like that. And then you're just cutting them into little chunks. And that makes really
just like
great.
with a hacksaw.
Just with a hacksaw. Yep. Sawzall, hacksaw, whatever it is. Make sure you get some of those bone fragments off after sawing process, because those will end up in the broth.
Make sure you use a clean blade, not one with steel chunks on it.
Right.
Steel shavings.
Yeah.
Coming from a contractor,
But you want to make sure you get those bone shavings off of there, because those will end up in your broth, and then when you're eating it, you're not going to want to find those. So it's not hard to do. Just clean it off before you put them away. But that'll give you a really nice source of broth throughout the year that you can slow cook. And I mean, it's amazing how much broth you can get out of just one bone.
When you make some homemade chili in a slow cooker and throw that in the bottom of it.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's real good.
Marrow is nature's butter.
Yep. And that goes for moose, caribou, deer. We mostly only do that with ungulate species.
Yeah.
And so, but any of those, the bones get cut up, they get put in the freezer, and then we get saved for later use. Yeah. So, and then we make a lot of broth out of those.
Yep.
So I think, unless you guys have anything else, that just about wraps up the field to freezer process.
We kind of beat this carcass to death. You see what I did there? Yeah, that's a good one right there. Yeah.
So if you're still hanging in there, thank you so much. Hopefully we helped you out. If you have any questions about this process or, the steps involved or anything like that, feel free to reach out to us. You can message us at our Instagram. If you search at the Northern Hunter on Instagram, and you can actually do it on Facebook too. Realize I didn't just say social media, but Facebook or Instagram, you can reach us there, send us messages. We have email direct, which is info@thenorthernhunter. Or if you go to the webpage, thenorthernhunter.com, you can hit the contact us button, throw a little bit of information in there, and it'll get you in contact with us. We will answer your question as soon as possible. While you're there, make sure you're getting some nice Northern Hunter merch. That really supports the channel and what we're doing, helps us grow this platform and reach more people. And if you want to help us while you're out there in the field,
while you're on your hunt, make sure that you're protecting your rifle and your scope with a Stealthy Hunter rifle cover from Ryan Lampers. Of course, the original tagline of our partners. It's just kind of nice to, keep true to that old nostalgic tagline for our sponsors. So, just wrapping this up here, we got Stealthy Hunter, Yukon River knives, hammer bullets, and 60-inch club, our newest edition. All use the same discount code for any of the applied items in checkout. That discount code is the Northern Hunter, no caps, no space in the checkout page in the promo code box or the discount code or whatever that website uses. And then for Batum 907, your discount code is TNHP. And for Weatherby, if you buy a rifle from Weatherby, let them know we sent you.
Exactly. And thank you guys so much for hanging in there. Again, let us know if you have any questions. Until next week, get out there, get after it, and good luck. See you there.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.